free from Lily Lou's complications, Leo made it to the dining hall on time and enjoyed a comfortable lunch. That afternoon, he headed back to the arts committee meeting. Cheryl Chun, the senior who ran the committee, gathered everyone for a quick huddle. It was mostly just to announce the final program order for the freshman welcome show and to get a status update on everyone's rehearsal progress. Leo sat in the back with his roommate, Marco Shaw, only half listening to Cheryl as his mind wandered. Suddenly, Marco elbowed him in the ribs, leaning in to whisper excitedly, "Dude, look, the humanities girl is here." Leo followed Marco's gaze. There, sitting in a back corner of the classroom, was Lily Liu. It clicked. No wonder the name sounded familiar. He'd seen her picture a few days ago, when he and his roommates were scrolling through the school's online forum, looking at a thread ranking the prettiest girls in the freshman class. The so-called it girl of the School of Humanities. She definitely lived up to the hype. She had the looks and the aura to back it up. Leo found himself looking at her for a beat too long. Lily seemed to notice his stare, turning her head to meet his eyes. She offered him a slight, knowing smile. Marco practically vibrated with excitement. Holy shit, she's looking at me. It's over, man. What do I do? If I ask her out, will I become public enemy #1 in our department? Leo shot his roommate a sideways glance. You might become public enemy #1 in Gotham City. As they bickered in hushed tones, they didn't notice that Lily, from her corner seat, was still watching them. Her clear, autumn water eyes reflected the silhouette of one person in particular. A spark of genuine interest flickered in the it girl's gaze. A couple of nights ago, on the school's athletic field, she had seen him sitting on the grass amidst a crowd, effortlessly playing his guitar and singing. It had made her curious. Then, their accidental meeting at lunch today, where he'd played the hero and saved her from a fall, had added another layer of good feeling. But what truly intrigued her was that she, the undisputed it girl of her department, had extended an invitation to thank him, only to be rejected so bluntly and decisively. It made this guy, Leo Wallace, feel completely different from all the other guys who chased after her. An interesting one, isn't he? A small smile played on Lily's lips. It made her want to get to know him even more. After the meeting, everyone scattered to continue their rehearsals. Leo returned to the empty classroom he'd been using that morning. He sat down, picked up his guitar, did a quick sound check, and resumed his practice, occasionally humming a few lines of the chorus. It was a quiet afternoon on campus. Golden sunlight filtered through the leaves of the trees outside, casting dappled patterns on the floor. The air was still, tiny dust motes dancing like sprites in the sunbeams. The boy sat with his guitar, a picture of casual grace, like a figure in an oil painting. Lily stood just outside the back door of the classroom, watching the scene through the small window. A strange light glinted in her eyes. A young woman's heart was quietly stirring. That evening, when Leo finished practicing and walked out of the classroom with his guitar case, he ran right into a familiar, graceful figure. "Fancy meeting you here," Lily said, a keyboard slung over her shoulder. She looked up at him, her expression pure and natural. "Going to get dinner?" Leo nodded. "Yeah, gotta beat the rush. If you're late, you get nothing." He wasn't kidding. The students at a top-tier university like this were just as competitive about getting food as they were about their grades. It created a real sense of urgency. Lily smiled sweetly. "I was just about to go too. Let's go together." This was the second time she had personally invited him. Logically, no one could bring themselves to refuse such a gentle and beautiful girl twice in a row. But a man on a mission for food absolutely could. Leo looked at the department's girl and decided to spell it out for her. "I'm in a hurry. I'm going to have to run to make it, and you probably won't be able to keep up." Lily froze, a silent laugh catching in her throat as she realized that was the reason he was turning her down. A playful glint entered her eyes as an idea formed. She lowered her gaze, feigning shyness while making a bold move, and held out her small hand. "Then, can you pull me along?" Leo stared, completely thrown. The air went still for a second. Lily, her eyes still downcast, felt a confident smile form on her lips. She'd put herself out there this much. There was no way he could refuse her now. The next second, Leo's brow furrowed. "How would that work?" "Huh?" Lily blinked, looking up at him in confusion. He was staring at her with a dead serious expression. "If I'm holding your hand," he explained, "then I won't be able to make it on time either. Is this girl trying to sabotage my dinner?" Lily's mind went blank, unable to process his logic. Just then, Leo glanced at the clock on the classroom wall, tossed out a quick "gotta go" by, and took off down the hall at a dead sprint. The man was on a mission. His stride was powerful. He left the girl standing there alone, staring dumbly at his retreating back. She felt herself slowly turning to stone. Wait, what? Since he'd agreed to help, he was going to do it right. For the next day or two, Leo spent most of his time holed up in one of the practice rooms the arts committee provided, focusing on his song. Occasionally, he joined the other performers in the main meeting room for a quick run-through and give Cheryl an update on his progress. Everything was moving along smoothly. The only minor annoyance was Lily Lou, who kept finding excuses to show up. After failing twice to get him to dinner, she seemed to have changed her tactics. She would accidentally wander over to the classroom next to his to say hello. Or, during group meetings, she'd walk right up to him in front of everyone and start a conversation. She even brought him a drink during a full cast rehearsal. When other students asked about it, their curiosity piqued. Lily would just offer a gentle smile and explain that Leo had saved her once, and she was just repaying the favor. "It's only fair, isn't it?" she'd say sweetly. But Marco Shaw had a very different opinion. "How is that fair at all?" he fumed, consumed by jealousy. "She's obviously into him. She's practically throwing herself at him, looking for any excuse to get close." Once Marco knew, it didn't take long for the other two residents of room 520 to find out. And once room 520 knew, it was only a matter of time before Claire Sterling found out, too. She heard all about it from her 3 loyal spies, how popular a certain someone had become with the girls in the arts committee, and all about the existence of a certain it girl named Lily. Sunday, the day the School of Humanities freshman welcome show finally arrived. At 6:30 in the evening, the Berkeley Auditorium, which could seat 1,000 people, was already buzzing with energy. The show wasn't scheduled to start for another half hour, but the hall was packed, a chaotic symphony of voices filling the air. It wasn't just freshmen, sophomores, and juniors from the School of Humanities. Students from other schools had come to see what all the fuss was about. Molly, Jade, and Quinn from room 205 were there, too. Leveraging their good looks, they easily found seats near the front. "Where's Claire?" Molly asked, scanning the crowd. Quinn was also puzzled. "Yeah, didn't she say she was coming to watch?" Jade thought for a moment. "She said that high school friend of hers is in the School of Humanities and is performing tonight. Maybe she went backstage to say hi." At the mention of their roommate's high school friend, the 3 girls couldn't help but shake their heads, their feelings a complicated mix. They had no idea who this mysterious guy was. Claire mentioned him occasionally, but had never introduced them. Apparently, they ate together all the time, and they'd even spent the Lovers' Festival together. As her roommates, the girls felt a little protective of Claire. What kind of guy could have their goddess of a roommate so smitten? If they saw him on stage tonight, they were determined to give him a thorough once-over on Claire's behalf. 6:55 p.m. 5 minutes until showtime. The backstage area was a whirlwind of controlled chaos. The tense, hurried voices of performers and crew members echoed through the wings. Cheryl Chun, head of the arts committee, was in her element, directing traffic like a general in her command tent, her orders calm and methodical. Leo was also backstage, waiting with his guitar. He felt perfectly calm, not a nerve in sight. Then a thought occurred to him. He pulled out his phone and glanced at the screen again. A little while earlier, his Campus Bell desk mate had sent him a message asking where his performance was in the lineup. He'd replied, but she hadn't written back since. Wonder what she's planning. Leo shook his head, deciding not to dwell on it. At exactly 7 o'clock, the freshman welcome show officially began. The auditorium erupted in thunderous applause and cheers, punctuated by whistles from the rowdier members of the audience. On stage, for hosts, 2 guys in suits and 2 girls in evening gowns walked out. They were all handsome and beautiful, their stage presence elegant and charming. After the customary introductions of attending faculty and special guests, they got right to it, announcing the official start of the performances. The curtain rose. Backstage, the arts committee staff and crew were a blur of motion. On stage, one act followed another in a seamless, well-organized flow. There were singers, comedy skits, stand-up routines, and even a magic act. The committee had clearly put in a ton of work. Every performance was polished and captivating, earning wave after wave of applause. The skits were hilarious, sending ripples of laughter through the audience and ratcheting up the already electric atmosphere. Before anyone knew it, the 7th act was up. As 2 hosts returned to the stage, they announced the next performance, a solo piano piece. Lily Lou, the humanities girl, glided onto the stage in a flowing white dress, her long hair cascading softly over her shoulders. She looked pure and ethereal. She sat at the grand piano, her fingers resting on the black and white keys. The opening notes of Chopin's Piano Concerto No. 1 flowed from her fingertips like a babbling brook, instantly captivating the audience. When the final note faded, The hall was silent for a breath before a roar of applause exploded. Lily rose, walked to the front of the stage, and, gathering the hem of her dress, performed a graceful curtsy. Her elegance drew another wave of cheers. Even the front rows, the girls from room 205 were impressed. "So that's Lily Liu?" Quinn said. "The humanities it girl. She's actually really good." Even Quinn, whose own looks were on par with any it girl, had to nod in admission. But then she pouted, a hint of competitiveness in her tone. "She's good, but she's still a step below our Claire." The show continued. Lily's performance seemed to have pushed the energy in the room to a new peak. A comedy skit followed, bringing the house down with laughter. Then a female student came on to sing a solo. She wasn't as stunning as Lily, but she was pretty and poised. Her rendition of a popular love song was moving and heartfelt, earning her a chorus of cheers. Finally, it was time for the 11th act. Our next performance, one of the hosts announced, is a solo guitar piece, Good Riddance. Performing is a student from the '07 advertising program, Leo Wallace. As the host finished, a tall, handsome figure walked calmly onto the stage, a guitar in his hand. It was Leo. In a corner of the audience, the guys from room 520 were already starting to cheer. Marco cupped his hand around his mouth and yelled, "Leo, you rock," followed by room 520 for life. The people around them chuckled. Some of the girls from the School of Humanities, who had heard him sing Wonderwall on the athletic field during orientation, looked on with eager anticipation. The girls from other schools who had come to watch also perked up, their eyes shining. "So this is that Leo guy everyone in the School of Humanities is talking about. He's pretty cute, and he has a great presence. So calm and confident on a big stage like this. It's kind of attractive." In the front row, the girls from room 205 looked on with surprised admiration. "So that's Leo? I've heard people talking about him. He's definitely cute. And he seems different from the other freshmen." Molly's eyes were practically sparkling. "Oh my God, he's exactly like the male lead in the romance novels I read. He's just like I imagined." Jade cut her off. "Chill. It's starting." The girls instinctively looked up. On stage, Leo pulled a stool to the center and sat down, his guitar resting in his lap. A mic stand was positioned in front of him. After a quick tuning adjustment, the bright, melodic intro of the song filled the auditorium. Tonight's freshman welcome show for the School of Humanities was destined to become a legend, not just for the department, but for all of Berkeley. Years later, those who would still talk about it, their memories sharp and clear. They would recall the scene with a sigh of wonder. It was insane. You weren't there, you didn't see it. You can't possibly imagine what it was like. The entire auditorium just went nuts. On that summer night in 2007, in the Berkeley Auditorium, the 1,000-strong audience erupted into a tidal wave of shock and excitement. In an instant, unable to contain the overwhelming shock, row after row of students surged to their feet. The audience moved like a tidal wave, a spectacular, unprecedented sea of motion. Everyone strained their eyes, staring at the stage in utter disbelief. They stared at the girl who now stood gracefully beside Leo, lost in the song. She was wearing a simple t-shirt and jeans. No makeup, her face pure and clean. Yet in that moment, her cool, stunning aura and her impossibly beautiful face could effortlessly outshine everyone else in the room. Even Lily Liu, in her carefully chosen white dress, seemed to pale in comparison. A Category 5 hurricane of shock ripped through the hearts of nearly everyone in the auditorium. Even though this was a humanities event, every freshman, and even the sophomores and juniors, recognized the girl on stage. On the very first day of school, her cool, radiant beauty had become the talk of the entire campus. In the student forum's prettiest freshman thread, the 2 or 3 candid, high-resolution photos of her profile had garnered over 5,000 likes and hundreds of replies, completely blowing every other department's girl out of the water. Claire Sterling, from the School of Business, International Finance Program. The cool, untouchable ice queen. Perfect looks, perfect figure, perfect aura. Unquestionably, the #1 campus belle of the freshman class. Backstage, the students from the arts committee were stunned. Is that Claire Sterling? The girl who came looking for Leo the other day. Was the campus belle from the business school? Zoe and Renee, from Leo's advertising class, were also dumbfounded. The girl in the baseball cap and mask. That was her. In their dorm room, Marco and Leon were freaking out. Holy shit. Holy shit. Wait, what? Bertha. Is Claire Sterling? Dylan was so shocked his mouth trembled. His face flushed as he struggled to form a word. He gave up, furiously scribbling on his notepad before holding it high way on. The girls from room 205 were equally floored. Quinn's eyes were wide. This is insane. Jade took a sharp breath, shaking her head with a wry smile. Claire really gave us a huge surprise. But Molly was practically vibrating with excitement, her eyes shining. Oh, this is so sweet, so romantic. This is better than my novels. As the audience roared, on stage, the performance continued. The song hadn't stopped. The guitar melody had faltered for a fraction of a second when the girl appeared, but the player's professionalism kicked in, and it quickly returned to its rhythm. Only now, a second voice had joined the solo performance. Leo, still seated with his guitar, instinctively looked up at his deskmate. The pure white beam of the spotlight hit her, wrapping her in a hazy, dreamlike glow. For a moment, he couldn't see her face clearly, but it was enough for his mind to superimpose the image of the cool, mature, beautiful woman from 16 years in the future onto the girl standing before him. His thoughts swirled. He suddenly realized that the second song he'd chosen on a whim for an encore was unbelievably fitting. If I have to leave you, I hope you'll be at peace. I just want you to be okay and not to worry. He sang, his eyes fixed on the girl bathed in the spotlight, and for a moment, he was lost. He thought of that rainy night in his past life, of throwing himself in front of that car to save her. In that life, his only regret was leaving his parents behind. He never regretted saving her. He just hoped that in that other timeline, his deskmate from 16 years later was okay. He hoped she wouldn't blame herself. The crowd was a sea of noise, but on stage, the guitar melody was clear and calm. Claire's eyes were fixed on the boy singing with his guitar, a soft, flickering light in their depths. The song had a soul. Whenever she heard him sing, she felt as if she could see the handsome, warm man she'd met 16 years in the future. 2 lifetimes. The memory of that rainy night, that intersection, still made her heart clench with the same gut-wrenching panic and pain. Leaning closer to the microphone, she seamlessly took the next verse, her gaze never leaving the boy in front of her. If you have to leave me, I'll pretend I'm at peace. Even if it hurts, I'll pretend it's nothing. Her cool voice seemed to echo the lyrics. Though her tone was calm and detached, it sent a strange, dull ache through the hearts of the audience. An unspoken sorrow began to creep through the auditorium. Unconsciously, the roaring tide of commotion began to subside. People stared at the pair on stage, listening to their song, mesmerized and lost in the moment. When they came to their senses, they were deeply moved. In the front row, Quinn looked on with awe and envy. I had no idea Claire could sing so well. Molly's eyes had turned into little hearts. They're so perfect together. I'm shipping this so hard. But Jade, always the most observant and thoughtful, wore a puzzled expression. Is it just me? She wondered. Or what does it seem like? They're singing this song with a little too much passion, like they're completely lost in it. The white spotlight shone down, illuminating the boy and the girl on stage. Neither of them knew the other had been reborn. But in that moment, lost in the song, they connected on a level that needed no words, their voices blending in perfect, unspoken harmony. Fair or not, the events of that night's performance, the girl walking through the crowd with a bouquet of baby's breath to give to the boy, and their subsequent duet, spread like wildfire. By the next morning, it was the talk of the entire School of Humanities, and indeed, all of Berkeley. The student forums exploded. Every other thread was about the freshman welcome show. Girls marveled at the girls' courage and confidence in presenting the flowers. Guys were consumed with jealousy over the boys' incredible luck. A fan giving flowers to a performer was, in itself, not a big deal. But when the fan was the girl who, from day one, had captivated the entire campus with her beauty, the impact was magnified exponentially. For those who knew a little, but not the whole story, their minds were officially blown, a stampede of 1,000 confused thoughts racing through their heads. In Building 37, Room 520, Leo sat obediently at his desk, surrounded by his 3 roommates, who were conducting a rigorous interrogation. Marco, wielding a clothes hanger like a weapon against a class enemy, pointed it at Leo. Confess and you'll be treated with leniency. Dylan, holding a slipper in each hand, stood menacingly. Resist and you'll be dealt with severely. Leon, the kindest of the 3, offered Leo one of the homemade date cakes from his hometown. So what's the deal? He asked cautiously. Your high school deskmate is really Claire Sterling. As he said her name, Leon couldn't help but swallow, his throat suddenly dry. Dylan and Marco fell silent, their eyes fixed on Leo. Under the intense scrutiny of his 3 roommates, Leo scratched his head and nodded. The room was silent for a beat. Then, all hell broke loose. Oh, holy shit, it's true. It's really Claire Sterling? The campus belle? She was really your freaking deskmate. It took them a while to vent their shock. When they finally calmed down, their eyes were still wide with disbelief. Dude, so Claire was the one bringing us drinks all those times. And we got to know her that well? We call the campus belle Bertha, and we called her that for days. Leo, trying to be helpful, offered, it's fine. You guys did say she had a beautiful soul. His words of comfort only made the three of them stare blankly. When the realization hit them, Marco let out another anguish cry. Oh my God, I can never show my face again. Furious and mortified, the three of them tackled Leo and gave him a sound beating. Afterward, feeling much better, they sat back down. Looking at Leo, whose hair was now a bird's nest, Marco took a deep breath and asked, with a mix of trepidation and gravity, so, what exactly is the deal between you and Bertha? Damn it. Between you and Claire. We're desk mates. In room 205, facing a similar interrogation from her three roommates, Claire was the picture of calm. Leo and I were desk mates for all 3 years of high school. We have a good relationship. Going on stage to give him flowers is perfectly reasonable, right? She delivered the explanation without batting an eye, leaving Molly, Quinn, and Jade on the verge of spitting up blood. They were going crazy. How is that reasonable at all? Quinn suddenly had a thought, her eyes lighting up. Wait, you two went out to eat together, and you even spent the lovers' festival together. How do you explain that? Jade and Molly's gazes snapped to her, their expressions clearly threatening consequences if she didn't fess up. Claire, cornered, remained unfazed. Without a moment's hesitation, she said, Oh, that's a tradition at Northwood High. All the desk mates eat together and spend the lovers' festival together. She even had the audacity to look at her three roommates and ask casually, Your high school didn't do that? Jade, Molly, and Quinn were dumbfounded. What kind of weird-ass tradition was that? Of course their high schools didn't do that. What kind of psycho school would? But Claire just nodded slightly, remarking as if it were obvious, Then that must be a problem with your schools. Meanwhile, back in room 520, Leo's roommates were forcing themselves to accept his explanation. Desk mates, right? Fine. Reasonable. As Marco spoke, a vein throbbed on his forehead, each word squeezed out from between clenched teeth. Leon looked confused. Wait, that's reasonable. Desk mates give each other flowers in front of 1,000 people, hold hands while singing, bring drinks all the time, and spend romantic festivals together. He was from a small town. Was this how people in the city lived? Dylan, looking miserable, tugged on Leon's arm. Leon, just accept it. It's better for us if it's reasonable. Compared to accepting that their roommate was in some kind of intimate, romantic relationship with a goddess like Claire Sterling, they would much rather delude themselves into believing they were just really, really close desk mates. Otherwise, the searing flames of jealousy would burn them to a crisp. Besides, maybe there was a 1 in a million chance that their goddamn high school, Northwood High, really did have those traditions. The three of them sat in a row, their hearts a tangled mess, watching as Leo casually walked out to the balcony to text his desk mate. The feeling was, you want your friends to do well, but you're also afraid they'll start driving a Porsche. And Leo wasn't just driving a Porsche. He was driving a freaking Lamborghini Ferrari hybrid. The next day, Monday, the freshmen finally began their official classes. Early that morning, as Leo and his roommates walked to the third classroom building for their classic literature course, they overheard snippets of excited conversation all around them. People were still talking about last night's welcome show. The rumor was that Berkeley's new campus belle, Claire Sterling, had gone on stage in front of everyone to give flowers to some guy. Their relationship was definitely something special. When the four of them found seats in the back of the classroom, Leo could feel the eyes of other students constantly glancing their way. Morning sunlight slanted across the campus, dappling the stone-paved paths with golden light that filtered through the swaying trees. Inside the classroom, the literature professor was lecturing from the podium. His delivery was witty and humorous, the content engaging. But Leo, sitting in the back, was distracted. It felt just like high school. His familiar campus belle desk mate was sitting right next to him. A faint, pleasant fragrance drifted over, shampoo, maybe mixed with something else, a fresh scent that was uniquely her. Leo instinctively stole a glance at her. Her profile was as exquisite as ever, the lines of her face nearly flawless. The scent, combined with the sight, made his heart skip a beat. Shaking himself back to reality, Leo quickly looked away, feeling a little guilty. He thought he'd been subtle enough not to be noticed. But a second later, a familiar slip of paper was discreetly pushed onto his desk. Don't daydream in class. The handwriting was sharp and forceful, exuding a top student coolness that you could feel through the paper. Leo blinked. This feels Incredibly familiar. Hadn't this exact thing happened on his first day back in high school? Caught in the act, he felt his face flush. He quickly sat up straight, pretending to be engrossed in the lecture. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw his desk mate sitting perfectly upright, her cool gaze fixed on the professor, completely focused. It was as if she had really come here just to learn. She really is a top student. I feel so ashamed. He silently chided himself. But he didn't see that while the girl next to him appeared to be paying full attention, the tips of her delicate ears were turning a faint shade of red. She, too, subtly glanced over at him, and upon confirming he was no longer staring, Claire let out a quiet sigh of relief. You idiot, she thought, staring at a girl like that. It's embarrassing. They hadn't spoken much after the welcome show, but an unspoken understanding seemed to have formed between them. It felt as if that one duet had somehow allowed their hearts to connect. Their relationship had, inexplicably, become more intimate, more ambiguous. Of course, to any outside observer, these two were already as intimate as it gets. For the entire class, half the students couldn't focus on the professor. They kept sneaking glances toward the back row, their disbelief growing with every peek. The more they looked, the more their minds reeled. So the rumors were actually true. Those two are really a thing. The untouchable, goddess-like campus belle of Berkeley is openly sitting in on some guy's class. This guy, what did he do to deserve this? As for the three members of room 520, who had a front row seat to the drama, they saw everything. Leo sneaking glances at Claire, Claire passing him a note. They even caught the subtle details, like Leo's guilty turn of the head and the red blush on Claire's ears. It was enough to make their minds crack. All they could think was, holy shit. These two were just shamelessly flaunting their affection. Did they have any consideration for the single guys sitting right next to them? Were they just props in this little game of theirs? Even now, sitting next to Leo and Claire, it all felt like a dream. The campus belle and their roommate. It was like hearing your cousin from back home suddenly married in Hathaway. They couldn't resist stealing another look at Claire's perfect profile. To everyone else, she was always the cool, unapproachable ice queen. The three roommates sighed internally. What a magnificent face. How did such a perfect flower end up with our handsome pile of manure? The classic literature class was a double period. When it was over, the professor, still looking like he wanted to teach more, called out to Claire as she was leaving. With a mix of professorial dignity and eager anticipation, he asked for her thoughts on the lecture. He received a stream of sincere, wide-eyed praise. The middle-aged professor, in his early 50s, felt his ego swell with satisfaction. He warmly invited her to come back and hang out anytime. Then, glancing at the bewildered faces of the other advertising students, he cleared his throat, regained a shred of his authority, and walked out of the classroom with his hands clasped behind his back, head held high. Just as he stepped through the door, he seemed unable to contain himself, pumping a fist and doing a tiny, celebratory hop. The entire class stared. After class, Leo went to the restroom, leaving the three guys from room 520 waiting with Claire by the stairs. The four of them stood in awkward silence. Claire simply raised an eyebrow. That was all it took. The three guys swarmed her like eager puppies. Bertha, Marco caught his slip-up mid-word. Ahem. No, wait. Claire. Sis. Claire just smiled, a cool, faint curve of her lips. It's fine. You can keep calling me that. It's kind of funny. The three guys stared stunned. She smiled again, her tone light. Just you three, though. No one else. That one sentence sent a jolt of ecstatic warmth through them. They were so moved they could have cried. Bertha, I knew it. This revolutionary bond we share. You'd never forget. Don't worry, Bertha. From now on, just say the word. Room 520 is at your command. It was a small, brilliant tactic from a woman who had been a CEO in her past life. A moment later, the girl casually added, by the way, if any other girls start showing up around Leo, make sure you let me know. She looked up at them. As his desk mate, I'm worried he'll get tricked by some other girl. I just want to help keep an eye on things for him. She raised an eyebrow. That's reasonable, right? The three of them nodded furiously. Reasonable. Totally reasonable. Don't you worry, Bertha. Leave it to us. If so much as a female fly gets near him, we'll swat it for you beforehand. Marco and Leon pounded their chests, making solemn promises. Dylan pounded his chest too. In Claire's presence, he had once again lost the ability to speak. For lunch, they went to a noodle shop just off campus. As they sat there eating, they noticed people at surrounding tables recognizing them as the stars of the freshman welcome show. A low murmur of whispers and excited chatter followed them. Claire, however, was completely unfazed. It's fine. You'll get used to it. Leo shot his deskmate a look, a dark line forming on his forehead. Easy for you to say. You're the one who caused all this, Bertha. It was a little late not to get used to it. But he had to admit she was right. It had been pretty much the same in high school. Once he thought about it that way, he felt a sense of calm. Let them talk, let them stare. It wasn't like he was losing anything. He glanced at his bowl of beef noodles. She had ordered the egg and vegetable noodles. On impulse, he picked up a piece of beef with his chopsticks and offered it to her. You should have some meat, too. The gesture was casual and natural. Internally, his mini-me gave himself a thumbs up. You've matured, Leo. The petty gossip of the outside world no longer disturbs your inner peace. Good job. The next second, however, his deskmate didn't push her bowl forward to accept the beef. Instead, to his complete surprise, she leaned forward, right up to his chopsticks. Tilting her head slightly, she opened her delicate mouth and, even more naturally than he had offered it, gently bit the piece of beef right off his chopsticks. She took it, with her mouth. Leo froze. It was a sneak attack. The other students in the noodle shop who had been secretly watching also froze. The restaurant fell into a sudden, dead silence. Only the girl sat back in her seat, her expression perfectly composed. She chewed and swallowed the beef without a change in her expression, then offered a simple critique. It's all right. At the same time, her own internal mini-me was beaming. Inner peace shattered. Nice one, Claire. Good job. Claire had her own classes that afternoon, so they parted ways after lunch. When Leo's advertising class noticed the absence of the beautiful girl next to him, they breathed a collective sigh of relief, though they couldn't help but feel a twinge of disappointment. That evening, back in his dorm, Leo got an unexpected text from his deskmate. Her roommates were curious to meet him and wanted to go out for dinner together. According to Claire, her roommate's exact words were, "We need to see if that guy is a suitable deskmate for our Claire." Leo blinked. That sounded weird and a little hostile. The thought of facing 3 or 4 girls from room 205 by himself was slightly intimidating. He thought for a moment, then texted back, asking if he should bring his own roommates from room 520. They could make it a dorm mixer. It would be more fun with more people anyway. His deskmate replied with a simple okay. He put his phone down just as his 3 roommates returned from the water heater room down the hall. Leo mentioned the dinner plan, asking if they had anything scheduled for the evening. If you guys are busy, it's no big deal. He hadn't even finished his sentence before Dylan, Marco, and Leon's eyes lit up in unison. Holy shit. For real, Godfather? Marco immediately slid across the floor on his knees and hugged Leo's leg, his voice thick with emotion. What Godfather? From now on, you're my real dad from another mother. At 7 that evening, at the Peak Barbecue just outside the east gate of the campus, the 4 guys from room 520 arrived first, grabbing a table outside. Tonight, everyone except Leo had clearly made an effort to dress up. Marco was actually wearing a suit jacket. On a hot September evening, you could break a sweat just standing outside, but he was gritting his teeth and bearing it. Style, he declared. Style is what matters. Dylan had followed his lead, borrowing another one of Marco's jackets. But the size was wrong. Not only was he sweating, but his small, thin frame was swallowed by the oversized coat, making him look slightly ridiculous. Leon's approach was simpler. He wore a tank top to show off his physique and biceps, confident that the ladies of room 205 would be captivated by his fitness charm. A few minutes later, the girls from room 205 arrived, with Claire leading the way. Leo stood up to greet them. You made it. Behind him, Marco, Leon, and Dylan shot to their feet as one, their backs ramrod straight. The girls from room 205 couldn't help but laugh. What's this? Are you guys waiting for a military inspection? Marco, ever the quick thinker, snapped to attention. Room 520, all present, awaiting inspection from our 4 beautiful commanders. His antics made Molly, Quinn, and even the reserved Jade laugh, instantly lightening the mood. The 2 groups sat down, ordered a mountain of barbecue from the owner, and got 2 cases of beer. Once the platters of sizzling, aromatic skewers arrived, the party got going. With a social queen like Quinn on one side and Marco on the other, the conversation flowed freely. They were all 18, full of life, and, after a few clinking beer bottles, they quickly warmed up to each other. The atmosphere at the table was lively and relaxed. Once the ice was broken, the girls of room 205 turned their collective attention to Leo. Quinn raised an eyebrow. So you're Leo? You were Claire's deskmate for 3 years? And you 2 are really good friends? Huh. She drew out the last few words teasingly. Leo scratched his head. I guess so. Molly pressed on. Really? Just desk mates? Because from what I saw at the welcome show the other night, you two seemed a little closer than that. This time, before Leo could even answer, Marco jumped in. They're just desk mates. It's a tradition at Northwood High. Leon nodded vigorously. Yeah, that's just what they do there. Dylan, head down, furiously scribbled on his notepad and held it up. Reasonable. The three girls stared. Beside them, Claire calmly sipped her drink. Having three new lackeys to speak for her was turning out to be quite useful. The group continued to eat and drink. A few beers later, everyone was feeling a pleasant buzz and had loosened up considerably. Marco and Quinn, two master flirts who had met their match, started a competitive drinking game. A dance? Leo asked, confused. From his roommates' excited, overlapping explanations, he pieced it together. It was Berkeley's 70th anniversary. The whole week was a campus-wide celebration, with each school's arts committee organizing various events. Basically, it was an excuse for everyone to party. The school administration largely turned a blind eye. The School of Humanities was hosting a formal dance. Although it was only for their own students, attendees were allowed to bring a date. The guys from room 520 were all fired up about it. Leo, on the other hand, had zero interest. He'd gone to a similar event in his past life, dragged along by his friends. The problem was he couldn't dance. He still vividly remembered his date's eyes getting red. He'd thought she was moved to tears by the romance of it all. Turns out, he'd stepped on her foot so many times he'd made her cry. She hadn't even finished the dance before limping off in tears. The incident had become a core part of his cringeworthy memories. Even a lifetime later, the thought of dancing gave him psychological trauma. You guys go, Leo said, shaking his head. I'm out. His roommates panicked. If Leo didn't go, what excuse would they have to ask the girls from room 205? Their plan was to have another door mixer, a perfect 4v4 the dance. If one person was missing, the whole thing would fall apart. Marco immediately dropped into his signature kneeling slide, grabbing Leo's leg. Leo, I'm begging you, he wailed. For the sake of your brother's happiness, you have to go. Dylan swiftly grabbed the other leg, tears in his eyes. Godfather. Leon, the most earnest of the three, looked around for a leg to grab. Finding none, he held out one of his homemade date cakes. Godfather, have a date cake. Leo looked at his roommate, a dark line on his forehead. You too. Leon blushed. Well, that Molly. I think she's pretty cute. Unable to withstand their pathetic pleas, Leo finally gave in. He called his deskmate and told her about the dance. He couldn't see her expression, but she seemed just as uninterested as he was. In the end, though, she agreed coolly. Fine. I'm not really interested, but I guess I can help you out. Leo breathed a sigh of relief. Thanks. The next second, her voice came back without a hint of hesitation. How are you going to thank me? It was smooth practiced. Leo blinked. Question mark? That evening, the guys of room 520 were all dressed up, preening in front of the mirror, combing their hair, and applying gel. Marco beamed. Guys, I think we look amazing. Leon struck a bicep pose in the mirror. Totally. Dylan, having left his notepad in a drawer, had an air of grim determination. Tonight, I will speak to a girl. His three roommates were dapper in their suits, glowing with confidence. Leo, however, was dressed casually in jeans and a hoodie. When he got to the dance, Cheryl Chun, the head of the arts committee, immediately pulled him aside. You're wearing that to a formal dance? She asked, her brow furrowed as she looked him up and down with disappointment. Leo scratched his head. I don't have any other clothes. It was the truth. Most freshmen, unless they were in the performing arts or hospitality programs, wouldn't think to bring a suit to college. Marco, the ultimate peacock, was the exception. The guy had 3 suits hanging in his closet, which was how he was able to lend them to Dylan and Leon. Cheryl waved her hand dismissively. Don't worry, I do. She turned and yelled to one of the committee members, get Leo a tux in his size. After a second thought, she added, and where's makeup? Get someone for makeup over here. 15 minutes later, Leo walked out of the dressing room, completely transformed. A well-fitted black tuxedo accentuated his tall, lean frame. His normally messy hair was styled, his bangs swept back, giving him a more mature, handsome look. Paired with his innate, easygoing charm, he was so devastatingly handsome it took your breath away. Several of the girls on the committee just stared, their eyes turning into little hearts. He's so hot. Even the cool and confident Cheryl was taken aback. You kid, she exclaimed, genuinely impressed. You clean up this well. Leo just scratched his head and smiled. Do I? In this life or the last. He never paid much attention to his appearance. This was a first. His smile seemed to be the last straw for Cheryl. She threw her hand up to cover his face. Don't smile. If you keep smiling like that, even I'm going to fall for you. After thanking Cheryl, Leo walked into the main hall where the dance was being held. His entrance immediately drew stares. A lot of girls' eyes lit up. Wow, who's that handsome guy? Just then, his 3 roommates swaggered over, looking smug. They saw the transformed Leo, and their jaws dropped. Holy shit, Marco gasped. Dude, what happened to you? You're almost 30% as handsome as me. Leon and Dylan were equally stunned and envious. They looked at Leo's perfectly tailored tuxedo, then down at their own borrowed suits. One of them was 6'1", the other barely 5'7". The suits were either too big or too small. Compared to Leo, they looked tragic, like a couple of clowns in suits. Let's go. We are not standing next to him, Marco declared, waving his hand. He led his 2 brothers away with a swagger. As long as we're not next to him, we're still handsome. Not much time had passed since the freshman welcome show. So, when Claire Sterling, stunning in an ice blue evening gown, walked up to a certain someone, the students around them immediately put 2 and 2 together. They recognized Leo and remembered the shocking, legendary scene from the show. But as they took in the current situation, their eyes went wide again. Wait a minute. Isn't having the campus belle, Claire Sterling, enough for one guy? Now the humanities girl, Lily Lou, is revolving around him too. Doesn't this kid know that the guy-to-girl ratio at Berkeley is already skewed? Monopolizing 2 goddesses is just asking for divine punishment. Countless students felt their hearts break with envy. Those who were a little more in the know suddenly understood, and they were even more shocked. No, wait, it looks like the campus belle and the it girl are fighting over Leo. In an instant, the gossip mongers were frantically texting their friends. Get over here. Major drama unfolding. The scene playing out in the center of the hall was indeed incredibly dramatic and visually striking. Lily Lou, in a pale green dress, looked gentle and delicate, as lovely as a watercolor painting. Claire Sterling, in an ice blue gown, was coolly radiant, exuding an aura of untouchable nobility. And stuck between them was Leo, making him the conspicuous center of attention. Leo looked from one to the other. The air felt thick with a strange tension. He tried to break the silence, but his desk mate completely ignored him. Claire turned her head to look at Lily, her expression calm. I'm sorry, she said, her tone level. His first dance is with me. It was a simple sentence, but it carried an unshakable authority. Faced with the girl before her, so dazzlingly beautiful tonight that she seemed almost unreal, even Lily, who had a competitive spirit, felt her confidence falter, as if she were being completely overpowered. Lily could only manage a weak smile. That's fine, she said, her voice soft. I'll take the second. In her own words, she had already conceded. Claire's expression didn't change. The second one is mine too, she stated calmly. A murmur went through the crowd. Lily's eye twitched, her composure finally cracking. But before she could respond, Claire continued, and the third, the fourth, the fifth, all the way to the last one. She paused, her cool, steady gaze fixed on Lily. They're all mine. She said it as if she were stating a simple, obvious fact. But the words made Lily's pupils contract. Her face fell completely. The surrounding students gasped, a wave of shock rippling through them. Just then, the guys from room 520, having met up with Quinn, Jade, and Molly, walked over just in time to hear Claire's declaration. Marco sucked in a sharp breath. Berth is straight up declaring sovereignty. Quinn's jaw dropped. Claire is being so boss. She grabbed Leon's arm and shook it excitedly. The novels I read aren't this dramatic. This is so sweet. My sugar levels are off the charts. While everyone was stunned by the girl's bold words, the handsome guy at the center of it all was completely lost. A giant question mark appeared over his head. He looked back and forth between them. His internal mini-me was bewildered. Wait, so how many dances am I supposed to do tonight? It feels like I'm going to be danced to death. Lily eventually retreated, forced to concede. As the gentle, flowing melody of a waltz filled the hall, Claire turned to Leo, a composed look on her face. Shall we? Leo looked awkward. Maybe we should skip it. I'm not a very good dancer. I'm afraid I'll step on you. Seeing his discomfort, Claire smiled. She knew all about the disastrous dance in his past life, where the clumsy fool had stepped all over his partner's feet. She even knew about the mortified journal entry he'd written afterward, could feel his shame and anxiety across time. She knew, and that was why she had dressed up so carefully tonight. It wasn't to compete with anyone else. It was to win back a little dignity for him across the barrier of a lifetime. Then step on them, the girl said, her voice soft but firm. I'm not afraid. Her calm, steady words made Leo freeze. He looked up and met his desk mate's gentle gaze. For reasons he couldn't explain, his heart was struck once again. Around them, couples were already beginning to waltz. Claire extended a delicate, pale hand toward him and smiled. So you shouldn't be afraid, either. I'll teach you. Her words held a kind of magic that made him instinctively trust her. Leo's anxiety began to fade. He took a light breath and gently took her hand. The girl gathered her skirt and curtsied gracefully. The boy, on instinct, bowed in return. A princess and her knight. And so, to the strains of a slow, beautiful waltz, they began. At her direction, he carefully placed a hand on her slender waist. They began to move with the music. Leo had a faint, residual memory of the steps from his past life. At first, he was tense, terrified of stepping on her, but Claire's soft, clear instructions murmured in his ear. Under her guidance, he gradually became more confident, more relaxed. He followed her lead, losing himself in the melody. Their movements grew more synchronized, their steps more fluid and graceful. Slowly, they began to draw the admiring gazes of others on the dance floor. The boy in the black tuxedo, tall and straight, a relaxed smile finally appearing on his handsome face. The girl in the ice blue gown, elegant and ethereal, her skirt swirling gently with every step. To everyone watching, they looked so impossibly, perfectly matched. Claire was drunk. She and Lily had gone head-to-head all night, each of them putting away nearly a full case of beer. It was a staggering display of tolerance and nerve. Lily had been the first to go down. Claire held on a little longer, but when the cool night air hit her, the alcohol finally caught up. Now, she was mumbling incoherently, half-conscious in Leo's arms, nuzzling her head against his chest like a kitten. Leo looked down at his desk mate and couldn't help but smile wryly. It wasn't a good idea to take her back to the dorm like this. It would just be a burden on her roommates. After a moment's thought, he made a decision. He bent down, slid one arm under her back and the other under her knees, and carefully lifted her into his arms. Then, he started walking toward a nearby motel. The tree-lined path was lit by the soft, yellow glow of streetlights, casting their two shadows onto the ground. The man, tall and dependable. The woman, asleep in his arms, delicate and lovely. The hem of her ice-blue gown trailed behind them, brushing against the pavement like the ripples of a wave. A car passed by. A passenger glanced out the window, and his eyes went wide. He rubbed them, thinking he was seeing things. What was this? Had he just stumbled into the middle of a beautiful, romantic movie scene? It was the same motel they had stayed at when they first arrived for school. When Leo walked up to the front desk, carrying Claire, the owner looked up at him, then at the passed-out girl in his arms, then back at Leo. Leo cleared his throat, embarrassed. She had too much to drink. I'm just taking care of her. The owner pursed his lips. I recognize you too. Otherwise, I would have called the cops. He quickly processed the check-in and slid a key card across the counter. Last one I got. King-sized bed. He swiped the card and managed to hit the light switch with his elbow. Leo carried Claire to the bed, gently laying her down before taking off her high heels. He went to the bathroom, wet 2 towels with warm water, and came back. With one towel, he carefully cleaned the dust from her bare feet. With the other, he sat on the edge of the bed and began to wipe her face. As he cleaned her face, flushed red from the alcohol, she seemed to get uncomfortable, turning her head away. Leo chuckled softly, gently turned her head back, and finished wiping her face. He took the dirty towels to the bathroom to rinse them. When he came back, she was already fast asleep, hugging a pillow. Leo sat quietly on the edge of the bed, studying her sleeping face. In her dreams, something seemed to be troubling her. Her beautiful eyebrows were slightly furrowed, making him feel a pang of sympathy. He reached out and gently smoothed her brow. Just then, she mumbled in her sleep. Leo. He leaned in closer, curious. A moment later, a small, unconscious smile appeared on her lips. You idiot. Leo blinked. Seriously? She's insulting me in her dreams? Worried the bright ceiling light would disturb her, Leo got up and turned it off, leaving only the small lamp on the bedside table. Its warm, yellow light illuminated her exquisite profile. Sitting there, Leo's mind drifted back to the scene outside the east gate earlier. The way she had stumbled into his arms, looked up with those red-rimmed eyes, and said those words. He didn't know what had caused her to say them, but hearing the tremor in her voice, the choked-back sob, had made his heart clench. It was a feeling he couldn't name. There was no logical reason for it, just an instinctive pain at her sorrow. He looked at the girl sleeping peacefully before him, at her beautiful face, and felt himself getting lost in thought. He couldn't deny it. As time went on, his feelings for her had quietly grown stronger. It seemed like she could effortlessly pull at his heartstrings. But there was still a hesitation in his heart. Over the long time they had known each other, he had wanted to ask her more than once. He wanted to know why she had so suddenly started to like him. What did he, Leo Wallace, do to deserve this honor? To have earned the affection of a girl so close to perfect? It wasn't teenage angst or him playing hard to get. It was the caution of an adult soul in matters of love. The more he cared, the more he was afraid of losing it. Snapping out of his thoughts, Leo shook his head with a wry smile. He looked back at his sleeping deskmate. He reached out and gently tucked a stray strand of hair behind her ear. And then he just sat there and watched. That night, one of them slept soundly, safe and secure. The other didn't sleep at all, quietly watching over her until morning. His hesitation didn't seem to stop their relationship from growing closer. As the days passed, the freshmen at Berkeley settled into university life, and Leo and Claire found themselves becoming more and more inseparable. They continued to eat together, walk together, study together, and go to the library together, all out in the open. To everyone else, they were already a couple. Only a few jealous haters still stubbornly insisted. They're just high school desk mates. It's normal for desk mates to be close, to hold hands, to take walks. There's no way the campus belle is dating that guy. As for the two of them, they never talked about it. There was a kind of tacit understanding. Leo held back because of his own doubts. And Claire, seeming to understand what he was thinking, never brought up the sensitive topic of their relationship either. She deliberately avoided it. But the distance between their two hearts was closing, slowly and irrevocably. Especially for Leo, as he spent more time with his deskmate. Darkness, a world without light. Leo felt his consciousness floating, light and soft, in a sea of black. He thought he was sinking into a deep sleep, but he could faintly hear a familiar crying sound. It seemed far away, yet right beside his ear, disturbing him, making him restless. Who the hell is that? Can't a guy get some rest? Finally, he couldn't take it anymore. He snapped his eyes open. The world was suddenly bright. Sunlight streamed through a window. The air smelled of sharp, sterile alcohol. White sheets, white walls, and a familiar girl, slumped in a chair by his bed. His mind was sluggish. He looked at the girl, who seemed to be napping with her head on the bed, and tried to place her. Who is this? She's kind of pretty. He tried to sit up, but a sharp pain shot through his side, making him suck in a breath. At the same time, he felt a dizzy throbbing at the back of his head. The movement seemed to wake the girl. She lifted her head, revealing a beautiful, moving face. His brain finally caught up. It was his deskmate. Of course. But the girl just stared at him, her eyes quickly turning red. Before he could react, she threw her arms around him, hugging him with a desperate strength, as if trying to merge their bodies into one. He could feel the softness of her against him, but he was more aware of the way her slender body was trembling. And the tearful question she whispered in his ear, "Why are you always like this?" After a brief, emotional outburst, Claire quickly composed herself, her expression returning to its usual cool calm, though her eyes were still red and swollen. She stood up and gave him a detached look. "Just lie there. Don't move. I'm going to get the doctor." "Oh," Leo said obediently. He watched her elegant figure leave the room, his heart stirring with a complex mix of emotions. There was relief, knowing he had helped her avoid that life-threatening danger. And there was something else, something he couldn't quite name. The middle-aged man in the next bed looked over at him. "You're a lucky kid," he said. "That pretty little thing has been taking care of you for 2 straight days." From the man's envious chatter, Leo learned that it had been almost 2 days since the attack. He'd been rushed to the hospital the day before yesterday. Luckily, his injuries weren't severe. He'd hit his head on a stone step, and the knife had wounded his side but missed his vital organs. The doctors couldn't quite explain why he'd been unconscious for so long. And for those 2 days, Claire had stayed by his side, barely sleeping, never leaving. Hearing this, Leo was stunned. He thought of her swollen eyes and pale, tired face. A strange, complicated warmth bloomed in his chest, but his head was still spinning from the near-death experience. He had too many thoughts to sort through. Claire returned with a doctor, who gave Leo another quick checkup. The doctor marveled at his luck, a minor concussion and a stab wound that had just grazed his side, barely missing his organs. He was already mostly healed. Another day of observation, and he could probably be discharged. Claire, however, wasn't convinced. She questioned the doctor repeatedly, asking for confirmation. Leo, sitting up in bed, finally spoke. "I feel fine." Before he could finish, The girl's cool gaze shot over to him. The adults are talking. Don't interrupt. Leo fell silent. He didn't know why. Maybe it was guilt, maybe something else, but one look from her was enough to make him back down. Oh, he said meekly. That afternoon, the police came. It was the same officers from the station near the train terminal. They took his statement, going over the events that had transpired. With Claire filling in the gaps and the officers explaining, Leo finally understood the whole story. Gavin Zhang, the man he'd helped capture on the train, had been detained and was being transferred to a prison outside the city when he escaped. He'd been a fugitive for 2 months, and the police assumed he had fled the state. But he had been hiding in an old, abandoned factory in the older part of town. On the day of the first snow, bored and thinking he was safe, he had gone for a walk and had run into Leo and Claire by chance. The moment he saw Claire, his hatred from the train incident flared up, and he went after them for revenge. Thankfully, Leo had reacted instantly, tackling him. As they rolled down the stone steps together, Leo had been stabbed and knocked unconscious. But Gavin hadn't gotten off easy either. He had ended up on the bottom, his head smashing against a protruding stone. He suffered a severe concussion and was knocked out cold on the spot. Your reaction was calm and correct, one of the officers told Leo, his tone full of praise. If you had let him get a clean swing with that knife, the consequences would have been unthinkable. Throughout the entire interview, Claire sat by his bed, holding his hand. When she heard the officer's words, her expression didn't change, but Leo felt her grip tighten. Her hand was cold, and it was trembling slightly. At the end of the interview, the officers apologized to both of them, promising that nothing like this would happen again. Gavin Zhang would be under maximum security. Atop the summit of Mount Jade, before the ancient monastery, the temple bell seemed to offer its blessing and the bodhisattva its witness. Beneath a sprawling, ancient pine tree in the temple courtyard, a boy's confession had been accepted by the girl before him. It felt like it had taken far too long to arrive. Thankfully, it wasn't too late. Leo eyed the red string Claire was about to tie on his wrist and pursed his lips. A good luck charm. Doesn't sound very lucky, does it? It's like you're just waiting for something bad to happen. He could already imagine the cheesy plot twist in some bargain bin novel. Some hack writer would have the string snap right before the main character gets wiped out. It sounded exactly like the kind of ridiculous crap some people would write. So what do you want to do about it? Claire looked at him, one eyebrow arched, her eyes narrowing with a dangerous glint. This is a gift from me. The first gift from your girlfriend. A jolt went through him, but his mind, thankfully, spun fast. He straightened up, his voice ringing with righteous conviction. I think it works better as a red string of fate. As he spoke, he quickly tied one end of the string to his own wrist and the other to Claire's, connecting them. The good luck charm had been upgraded to a fated connection. It was perfectly logical. He felt like a genius. Getting a girlfriend had clearly sharpened his wits. The miniature, cartoon version of himself in his mind struck a triumphant pose, hands on hips. Wait, something wasn't right. Leo looked at his hand, then at his new girlfriend's. With the string connecting them, they couldn't exactly walk normally. They were stuck together like conjoined twins. He scratched his head in embarrassment. Okay, maybe not so logical after all. Just as he was about to sheepishly untie the string, he heard a soft voice. I don't know, a cool voice murmured. I think it's perfectly logical. Before Leo could react, he felt a sudden tug on the red string. Claire had yanked her hand up, pulling him off balance and straight toward her. In an instant, the distance between them closed until they were inches apart, their bodies almost touching. His girlfriend's beautiful face was magnified before him, her delicate, captivating scent washing over him. For a second, Leo's heart nearly stopped. Looking at her flustered new boyfriend, Claire's expression was as serene as ever, but the corner of her mouth curved into a barely perceptible smile. We're official now. Shouldn't we celebrate? With that, she closed her eyes and tilted her delicate chin up slightly. Leo just stared. Question mark. He didn't get it. How were you supposed to celebrate with your eyes closed? Weren't you supposed to light fireworks or something? Claire opened her eyes, looking at him with the exasperated expression of someone dealing with a hopeless case. She bit her lips slightly. When a girl closes her eyes, it means she wants you to kiss her. You idiot. The realization hit Leo like a ton of bricks, and he scrambled in a flustered panic. Oh, right. In his past life, he'd been a single, work-obsessed guy into his 30s. He had zero romantic experience. All his knowledge came from action movies and fantasy novels, not the kind of stories that explained the subtle cues of the female heart. Sorry, let's try that again. When she closed her eyes again, waiting patiently, Leo felt like a rookie on his first day. He leaned in cautiously, heart hammering, and tentatively brushed his lips against hers. It was a feather-light touch, like a dragonfly skimming water. He pulled back immediately, feeling as guilty as a thief. Was that okay? Claire opened her eyes and looked at the nervous, blushing idiot in front of her. She didn't know whether to be angry or amused. No, though she had never been in a relationship in her past life either. As the formidable CEO of a publicly traded company, she was a woman of decisive action. When an employee didn't know how to do something, her solution was always the same: a personal demonstration. The decision made, she reached out without warning and cupped his face in her hands. Her long, cool fingers gently held his cheeks, steadying him. Then, she rose slightly on her toes, leaned in, tilted her head, and pressed her lips firmly against his. The touch was soft and warm. His world tilted on its axis. The wind and snow fell silent. The snowflakes drifting down from the heavens seemed to slow, each one a frame in a silent movie, falling gently to create a romantic backdrop for their two silhouettes melting into one. The solemn old temple stood watch. In the hazy incense smoke of the prayer hall, the Bodhisattva smiled and smiled, and smiled until its painted lips began to feel a little stiff. These two little punks, are they ever going to stop? After a long moment, their lips parted. Claire took a small step back, her chest rising and falling as she caught her breath. A blush colored her cheeks, but she maintained a composed expression. "That's how it's done," she said coolly. "Understand?" Leo took a deep breath, the wonderful, soft sensation still lingering. He swallowed hard, but his mouth was still dry and his heart was racing. He forced a nod. Yeah, logical. The red string was only so long. Having their wrists tied together was a cute little game for a moment, but it wasn't practical. If they walked out like that, people would think they were performing some kind of weird trust exercise. Fortunately, a small problem like this was no match for Northwood High's brilliant top student. Like a magician, Claire produced a second red string. She tied this one onto her own wrist and gave the original back to Leo as a proper gift. Now they each had one, a matching pair. They left the monastery and headed down the mountain, flagging a taxi at the bottom of the road. On the way to the subway station, Leo sat in the back seat, glancing at the red string on his wrist, then at the identical one on his girlfriend's. He couldn't help but grin like an idiot. Matching red strings. How cool was that? The 30-something-year-old bachelor Leo Wallace from his last life had never gotten this kind of treatment. This time around, he was winning. Claire glanced at her new boyfriend. "What are you so happy about?" Leo quickly wiped the grin off his face, replacing it with a look of mature contemplation. "Nothing. I was just thinking. It wasn't easy." The words made him feel a genuine wave of emotion. "I used to overthink everything, deliberately avoiding things I didn't want to face. But looking back now, you went through a lot." Hearing this, the light in her eyes softened. It was nothing, as long as it was worth it. Leo shook his head earnestly. "No, I was the one who was too stupid and slow. It was never about logic or coincidence, was it? Bringing me breakfast, buying me water, watching the stars at the observatory, giving me flowers at the welcome show." From the base of Mount Jade, they took a taxi to the nearest subway station. After passing through security, they boarded the train back to campus. It was over a dozen stops to the university town, a ride of nearly 40 minutes. The new couple sat together, their bodies naturally pressed close. Even while seated, they held hands. Their intimacy drew glances from other passengers in the car, most of whom looked at the well-matched, handsome pair with a mixture of admiration and wistful nostalgia. Ah, to be young. Look at that little couple stuck together like glue. Leo, however, was completely oblivious to the attention. It was the first time in 2 lifetimes he'd had a girlfriend, and he treasured her like a priceless artifact he'd just discovered. He looked at the delicate hand he was holding, then at the matching red strings on their wrists, examining them over and over as if he could never get tired of the sight. Claire couldn't help but laugh beside him. The little fool was acting like a child. "Stop staring. It's not going to disappear." Leo's expression turned serious. "Of course it won't. And if it did, I'd find it again." Inside his head, his miniature self stood guard, brandishing a tiny sword and glaring around defensively. "Disappear? Are you kidding me? It took me forever to find a girlfriend. I'll fight anyone who tries to take her away." She paused, then her eyes curved into crescents, a smile flowing through them. "You're such a kid. A sweet-talking kid." She offered the cool assessment while gently squeezing his hand a little tighter. They had checked out of the hospital in the afternoon. After their long detour, it was nearly midnight by the time they got back to campus. The university gates were still open, and the dorms hadn't locked down yet. But the knife wound on Leo's side wasn't fully healed and needed the dressing changed. Not wanting his roommates to see it and ask a bunch of worry questions, he decided to stay one more night at the small motel just outside the east gate. Claire readily agreed to stay with him. "It'll be hard for you to apply the ointment yourself," she said. "An injured person needs someone to take care of them. Besides," she added, "I'm your girlfriend. Taking care of you is perfectly logical, isn't it?" The phrasing was practiced and familiar. Only now classmate had been upgraded to girlfriend. It rolled off her tongue, so naturally it left Leo stunned, still not quite used to the new reality. But as he thought about it, clarity dawned. Holy shit, now it actually is logical. He agreed immediately. He watched as Claire gathered his luggage and the bags of medical supplies, refusing to let him carry anything, and strode purposefully toward the motel. A warmth bloomed in his chest. To be cared for so matter-of-factly was a feeling he'd never experienced from anyone but his parents in his previous life. So this was what it felt like to have a girlfriend. Even as a man, used to fighting his battles alone, it turned out he could have a gentle, steady pillar to lean on. It felt really good. On the outside, Leo remained calm and reflective. On the inside, his miniature self was grinning so wide his face was about to split. Ha 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 ha, this is awesome. Having a girlfriend is the best. For your information, I have a girlfriend. Can you believe it? Some people still don't have girlfriends. Huh. It was the same small motel just outside the east gate. As he and his girlfriend walked through the entrance, Leo glanced at the sign and was surprised to notice for the first time that the place was literally called the One Motel. The owner certainly had a unique personality. Thinking back to the last 2 times he'd checked in, the owner's crisp, no-nonsense demeanor had the air of a reclusive master. The name suddenly made sense. As they walked in, a man and a woman were at the front desk. The girl seemed a little drunk, swaying and holding onto the counter to keep from falling. The guy, however, paid her no mind, impatiently trying to get a room. "Hey, boss," he said, his voice thick with insinuation. "You've only got 1 room left, right?" The owner glanced at them and replied curtly, 20 left. The guy was stunned. He recovered, annoyed, and lowered his voice. "1 is enough. I just want 1. The owner looked at the agitated customer. 20 rooms. 1. And they're all twin beds. Leaky faucets, no electricity. Finally, frustrated and angry, the guy grabbed the girl and stormed out. It was Leo and Claire's turn. "We'd like a room, please." Before Leo could even begin to wonder how many rooms he should ask for, the owner recognized them and flicked a key card across the counter. "Only 1 left." Leo blinked. Question mark. The owner's face was impassive. He added king-size bed, running water, electricity, and all the necessary amenities. Leo. Beside him, Claire's eyebrow shot up. She gave the motel owner a look of distinct approval. "This one can sit at the main table. He's a bit old. Otherwise, he could have been a groomsman." Once in the room, they dropped off the luggage and medicine. They were both hungry, so they decided to go out and find something to eat. They found a small restaurant nearby, sat down, and ordered. The food arrived quickly. Because Leo was still recovering, the doctor had told him to avoid anything too rich or greasy, so Claire had ordered a table full of vegetable dishes. Leo felt like he hadn't had meat in days, and his stomach was growling. He looked at the plates of green vegetables and sighed. "Can't we get something a little more substantial?" Across from him, Claire looked up and raised an eyebrow. "Substantial? There is." Leo looked at the table of vegetables, confused. "There is? Where?" She answered coolly, "Me." Leo, who had just taken a sip of water, nearly sprayed it everywhere. He broke into a fit of coughing, staring at Claire. Even though she was officially his girlfriend now, hearing her say something like that still made his heart race and his scalp tingle. "Hey, Comrade Bertha Sue, can you watch what you're saying? How can you say such explosive lines with such a cool, detached face?" But she just continued placidly, placing vegetables in his bowl. "Eat your greens first. If you want something more substantial, and you're brave enough to try it, I'll be waiting for you tonight." Leo stammered. No, the vegetables are great. I'm good with vegetables." Sweating profusely, JPG. Other students in the restaurant recognized Leo and Claire. Conrad Sterling, chairman of the Summit Group, one of East Bay's 10 outstanding entrepreneurs. With a net worth approaching $10 billion, he was ranked among the top 50 on the Forbes national list for 2007. His personality was calm and commanding, his methods decisive and absolute. Outside of work, he was the current head of the Sterling family and Claire Sterling's father. Facing a man who could make the entire East Bay business world tremble with a single stomp of his foot, a man whose brow was now furrowed as his commanding gaze swept over him. Even Mr. Joe, his trusted subordinate, personal driver, and bodyguard of many years, felt an invisible pressure. He shot up from his seat, standing as straight and rigid as a spear. "Sir, Mr. Joe reported, his expression grim and his tone meticulous. Miss Sterling and that young man. They were high school classmates. Classmates? Conrad Sterling echoed, raising an eyebrow in a gesture so familiar it mirrored his daughter's. He looked thoughtful. Are they very close? Mr. Joe's body went imperceptibly rigid for a fraction of a second. The former Special Forces soldier's face remained calm. It is an appropriate relationship for classmates. He lowered his head, his pupils vibrating wildly. Though, it's appropriate. It's by Miss Sterling's standard of appropriateness. Perhaps it was due to his trust in the subordinate before him, or perhaps it was his familiarity with his own daughter, but Conrad's brow smoothed, and he smiled. I thought as much. He stood and walked to the panoramic floor-to-ceiling windows of his office. From the 37th floor of the Summit Group headquarters, the most prosperous and dazzling skyline of East Bay spread out before him. The powerful middle-aged man, who held the fates of thousands of employees in his hands, stood as imposing as a mountain. Only his calm, confident voice drifted back. That girl, Claire, she takes after me. Cool and proud. An ordinary boy wouldn't even register on her radar. Others might gossip, speculating about why she gave up Harvard and Yale to go to Berkeley, but I, as her father, know she thinks on a different level. She has her own calculations, her own plans. Wouldn't you agree, Joe? Mr. Joe nodded slowly. You are right, sir. He lowered his head again. From an angle his boss couldn't see, the former Special Forces driver's pupils continued their frantic dance. The next second, as Conrad turned back from the window, Mr. Joe's head snapped up, his gaze respectfully meeting his boss's once more. He was instantly calm and composed. His pupils were steady, his demeanor impeccable, the ultimate self-control of a former elite soldier. Satisfied with the response, Conrad smiled again, his mood visibly brightening. So you see, a father knows his daughter best. How could my daughter, Conrad Sterling's precious girl, be so easily swayed by some high school classmate? If something like that were to happen, it would be the joke of the century. I might as well quit being a father, quit being the CEO of Summit. Hell, I might as well jump from this 37th floor right now, ha ha ha. He cracked what he considered a witty joke to his trusted confidant. The chairman of Summit Group let out a hearty laugh. Mr. Joe glanced nervously at the view from the 37th floor and swallowed carefully. You should reconsider, sir. Lost in his own joke, Conrad didn't quite hear him. He waved a hand. That's all. You can head home and get some rest. Now that you're in East Bay, continue to follow Claire's arrangements. Her orders come first. Even mine are second. Hearing this, Mr. Joe suddenly felt a great sense of relief. Yes, sir. He turned to leave. As he reached the door, Conrad called out to him. By the way, I heard you were sick for a while back in Northwood. Are you feeling better now? The chairman expressed a degree of concern for the subordinate who had been with him for over a decade. Mr. Joe turned, nodding calmly at his boss. Much better, sir. Thank you for asking. His voice was even, without a ripple. His heartbeat was steady and slow. Thump, thump, thump. The chairman relaxed. Good. You may go. Mr. Joe gave a respectful bow and turned to leave. The moment he pulled the office door shut behind him, the Special Forces soldier's pupils erupted in a third, violent tremor. His heart rate instantly redlined. Thump, 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 thump. It took him a long moment to recover. Thinking back on his conversation with the big boss, Mr. Joe broke out in another cold sweat, his heart still pounding with lingering fear. On one side was his boss, on the other his little boss. And before he had even arrived, Miss Sterling had specifically instructed him to keep matters between her and her classmate confidential. That's why he had just forced himself to hold back the full truth. But at least he hadn't technically lied to his boss. With this thought, Mr. Joe breathed a small sigh of relief, his conscience and professional ethics somewhat soothed. No matter how appropriate or inappropriate it is, at the very least, the relationship between Miss Sterling and Leo Wallace is, in fact, that of classmates. We're not just classmates anymore, Claire said as they walked back to the motel after dinner, hand in hand. The streetlights stretched their close-knit shadows on the pavement. Shouldn't we call each other something different? Leo paused, thinking she had a point. He used to call her classmate Sterling, but now that they were boyfriend and girlfriend, that felt too distant. But calling her babe like his buddy Kevin did felt wrong. He shook his head. He wasn't as shameless as Kevin. He couldn't bring himself to say it. Still, couples were supposed to have nicknames for each other. Little inside jokes, a special connection. He racked his brain, but came up empty. He looked at his girlfriend and asked tentatively, "Is Bertha Sue out of the question?" Hiss. Before he could finish, a slender hand gently pinched the soft flesh at his waist. Claire frowned. "Of course it is." Sucking in a sharp breath, Leo rubbed his side. "Then what do you want me to call you?" She tilted her head, thinking for a moment. Then, her brows lifted, and a spark lit up in her eyes. In a single day, his composure had been shattered twice. That sudden kiss from his girlfriend had completely dismantled Leo's defenses, leaving him dazed and disoriented. He was so stunned that he obediently complied, mumbling the word before he even knew what he was doing. And then, Claire wasn't satisfied. "Not just once. Say it again." "Sweet sweetheart." The girl nodded, satisfied, and reached out to ruffle his hair with a serene expression. "Good boy." Then she turned, hands clasped behind her back, and walked briskly toward the motel, leaving him with the triumphant silhouette of a victorious empress. Leo hurried to catch up, his inner cartoon self hanging its head in defeat. "You're pathetic. How could you surrender so easily? Come back, Bertha Sue. Let's have another round." Back in the motel room, Claire went to take a shower, leaving Leo sitting outside alone, a little dazed. The motel bathroom wasn't very soundproof. The gentle patter of water was clearly audible through the door, so clear you could almost visualize the spray hitting her smooth, soft skin and splashing away. And that's where the author was censored. Damn you, censorship. Anyway, the guy sitting outside the bathroom was feeling extremely distracted, his ears practically perked up. He snapped out of it and began to scold himself. "This isn't right. Just this morning, we had a pure, innocent confession witnessed by a bodhisattva in a tranquil temple. Now I'm having all these impure thoughts. The bodhisattva would be furious. Calm down, calm down. Be as calm as ice, and the heavens can fall without disturbing you." He frantically recited a mantra he'd picked up from some TV show, finally managing to wrestle his racing thoughts under control. Inside the bathroom, the sound of water stopped, replaced by the faint rustle of clothing. Then, Claire's pleasant, cool voice called out, "Kid, come in and brush your teeth." Leo blinked. He didn't know why, but lately his girlfriend had taken a liking to calling him that, and it was starting to become a habit. He was a grown man, for crying out loud, even ignoring his 30-something soul from a past life. What was with his kid business? Did a boyfriend have no dignity? He squared his shoulders, sitting firmly on the stool like a mountain. "In a minute. I don't feel like it right now." His voice was a deep, authoritative baritone. A grown man follows his own schedule. The next second, the bathroom door opened. A figure emerged in a cloud of steam, dressed in a simple nightgown, looking fresh and beautiful. She glanced at the boy on the stool, her eyes narrowing. "Are you coming or not?" Just 3 words. Leo shot up from the stool and obediently walked over. Coming. It wasn't that he was scared. He just suddenly felt an urgent need to freshen up. After quickly washing up, he came out of the bathroom to find his girlfriend already sitting on the edge of the bed. When she saw him, she casually beckoned him over. "Come here." Leo walked over and sat down, unsure what was happening. Then he heard her say coolly, "Take off your shirt." Whoosh! He shot off the bed and scrambled back several steps, staring at her in shock. "Wait a minute. We just made it official today. Are we moving this fast?" Seeing the shock on his face, Claire guessed what he was thinking and gave him a look reserved for idiots. "Take off your shirt so I can apply the ointment." Leo froze, then realization dawned. "Oh, all right." He sat back down awkwardly and lifted his shirt, revealing the wound on his side. When he'd been wrestling with Gavin Jong, they had tumbled down the stairs, and the thug's fruit knife had grazed his side. It had required 7 stitches. The wound was mostly healed now, but the scar was still a twisted, ugly line. Claire stared at it, transfixed. She reached out and touched it with extreme care, her touch so gentle it was as if she were afraid the slightest pressure would cause him pain. "Does it hurt?" Leo ran a hand through his hair. "It's fine. My mind was blank at the time. I didn't even notice. It's almost better now." Claire pressed her lips together, saying nothing. She took out the antiseptic and cotton swabs from a plastic bag on the nightstand and began to clean the wound. The entire process was silent, but an unspoken emotion seemed to fill the room, slowly spreading through the air. A few moments later, she was finished. As Leo was pulling his shirt back down, he heard her say coolly, "Now, take off your pants." He instinctively reached for his waistband before, whoosh, he froze. He looked up at her as if she were a con artist. "Nice try, trying to trick me when my guard is down." I almost fell for it. Her prank having failed, a tiny, almost invisible smile played on her lips. She said nonchalantly, "Don't get the wrong idea. It's time to change into your pajama pants and go to sleep." Leo eyed her warily. "I'll change in the bathroom." The painful memory of her accidentally flipping on the lights last time was still fresh in his mind. Having learned his lesson, he scurried into the bathroom and only came out once he was safely in his pajama pants. Then it was time for bed. They turned off the lights and laid down on the large bed. There was only one blanket for the two of them. In the darkness, her faint, pleasant scent drifted over. Her soft body was just inches away. He could feel her warmth and the slight rise and fall of her breathing. His heart, betraying him, began to speed up again. Even though they had shared a bed before, this time was different. This time, they were officially boyfriend and girlfriend. His mind couldn't help but start to wander. "Leo." In the darkness, her calm voice broke the silence. He came back to himself just in time to hear a sentence that nearly sent his soul flying from his body. "You're poking me." Leo practically leaped out of the bed. "I'm not. I didn't. You don't talk nonsense." The light flicked on. Claire was fumbling under the covers, pulling out a cell phone. She looked at him like he was an absolute moron. "I was talking about the phone. What were you thinking about?" Leo stammered. I was also talking about the phone." He put his phone on his pillow, turned off the light, and lay back down, his heart still hammering with residual shock. This time, however, the scare had completely chased away any stray thoughts. Breathing in her faint scent in the darkness, Leo felt his mind slowly grow peaceful and calm. A crisp winter morning, in front of the second classroom building on campus. The new couple was about to say their goodbyes when the girl suddenly leaned in for a kiss. It wasn't just the air around them that went silent. Leo himself was completely stunned. It was a classic Pavlovian response. Remembering the composure-shattering kiss from a night before, he was hit with a conditioned reflex. For a split second, he almost called her sweetheart again. He caught himself just in time, breaking hard against the momentum. His inner cartoon self clutched its chest in relief. That was close. At the same time, he looked at his girlfriend with suspicion. What was that for? Once bitten, twice shy. His girlfriend was full of tricks. Yesterday, she'd shattered his composure and tricked him into calling her sweetheart. He had a feeling she was up to something again. But Claire just looked at him serenely. "The light was good. You looked kissable." She paused, then glanced at him. "What? You're my boyfriend. Can I kiss you?" The word boyfriend sent a jolt of pure joy through him. You can. Of course you can." His inner self, all suspicion gone, was now beaming, radiating pure bliss. "Did you hear that? Boyfriend. Can you believe it? Some people are still single." With one sentence, she had him wrapped around her finger. But she wasn't done. She looked at him, raising an eyebrow. "And you?" Leo, snapping back to reality, blinked. Without a hint of a blush, she pointed to her own lips. "It's only fair to reciprocate, right? It's logical." It dawned on him, although he felt a little embarrassed doing this in public. What kind of man would back down at a time like this? Feeling like a thief, he quickly leaned in and gave her a quick peck on the lips. "They're okay." Claire gave a slight, non-committal nod. Acceptable, but the pleased look in her eyes told a different story. It was almost time for class, so they said their goodbyes. They left behind a field of onlookers, all frozen like statues. One student, feeling like he was dreaming, finally managed to stammer, Did they just kiss?" Another student's eye was twitching uncontrollably. He struggled to remain calm. "Don't overreact. It's a Northwood High custom. So what if classmates share a kiss? It's logical." Countless students stared blankly for a second, then nodded fiercely through gritted teeth. "Right. Low logical." They all forced themselves to turn away calmly and walk off. The moment they turned, their pupils dilated in collective shock. After dropping his girlfriend off at her classroom, Leo headed back to his dorm. He didn't have any classes for his major that morning. He pushed open the door to room 520. His roommates had just woken up and were lazing around in bed. But the moment they saw him, all three of them shot up. "Holy shit, Leo, you're alive." He had been missing from campus for 4 or 5 days. Although Claire had helped him get an official leave of absence, his roommates had been full of questions. Now, they swarmed him, a mix of concern, curiosity, and gossip. "Dude, where have you been? We heard Bertha helped you get the time off. We texted you, messaged the group chat, but you never replied. We thought you were dead." "I was pretty close," Leo thought silently. Out loud, he just gave them a casual, fabricated excuse. "Nah, just had some family stuff to deal with." Leon, the most straightforward of the group, bought it. But Marco and Dylan had more questions. "What about Bertha then?" Marco pressed. "Our advisor, Alex, said she was the one who arranged your leave." And the girls from her dorm said she's been gone these past few days, too. Oh, Leo said, spinning another lie. She had some stuff to deal with, too. After vaguely placating his roommates, he went out to the balcony to collect his laundry from a few days ago, leaving the three of them staring at each other inside. Marco looked at Leo's back on the balcony and whispered conspiratorially to the others. You guys think Leo's business and Bertha's business could be the same business? Leon had a rare stroke of inspiration. You don't think they went off to get married, do you? Dylan rolled his eyes. Of course not. They're not even old enough. Besides, he added offhandedly, you have to confess and make it official before you get married, right? Marco laughed, making a joke. Exactly. The most they could have done is confess their love and run off to live the couple's life for a few days. Ha ha ha. Dylan and Leon laughed along. That was even more impossible. Leo and Bertha had the most rock-solid, purely logical classmate relationship ever. A confession? A relationship? If that happened, the three of them would do a naked handstand run around the track. Ha 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 ha. For a moment, room 520 was filled with the sound of brilliant, carefree laughter. When Leo came back inside with his clothes, he looked at his three roommates curiously. What were you guys laughing about? The trio instantly wiped the smiles off their faces, their expressions deadpan. Nothing. We missed you. We're just happy to have you back, man. They quickly changed the subject, filling him in on the latest gossip. The biggest news was that their dorm leader, Leon, and Molly Tang from Claire's dorm were starting to get close. They had interacted a lot during the joint dorm mixers and the dance. While Leo was gone, Leon had finally worked up the courage to ask her out for a meal alone, and she'd said yes. For their first date, Leon wanted to get her a gift. Dylan and Marco, his two so-called advisors, had thrown out all sorts of ideas, but Leon wasn't satisfied with any of them. In the end, he decided to just buy a stack of romance novels, hoping to appeal to her known interests. Marco and Dylan had rolled their eyes. Is that really going to work? But when Leon returned from the date that night, beaming and ecstatic, he had reported back. Lily Lou, the beauty of the humanities department. To others, she was a gentle, graceful, and captivating freshman. Beautiful, kind, and approachable. A goddess in the eyes of countless male students. As for Leo, his impression of her was a bit more straightforward. A girl who's really good at looking good. Legs aren't long enough, runs too slow. Not a suitable lunch rush partner. Over the past few months, because Marco had dragged him into joining the school's arts committee, he'd had a fair amount of contact with Lily, who was also a member. They were on pretty familiar terms. But when his roommates mentioned Lily's birthday invitation, Leo hadn't planned on going. It had nothing to do with anything complicated. With his steel-reinforced concrete level of obliviousness, he hadn't yet deciphered Lily's increasingly obvious advances. After all, this was the guy who had maintained a perfectly logical classmate relationship for half a year before it finally became official. Such was the gold standard ignorance of a truly dense man. The reason Leo wasn't interested was simple. He had just started dating his girlfriend. In the early days of a new relationship, all you can think about is spending more time with your partner. Everything and everyone else fades into the background. I have a girlfriend now. What could possibly be more fun than my girlfriend? He hadn't expected the campus beauty herself to come looking for him that very afternoon. He had a marketing class for his major that afternoon in Building 4, room 203. As it happened, the broadcast journalism class was right next door in 204. Lily was in that class. When his class let out in the evening, Leo had just stepped out of the classroom when he heard a familiar voice call his name. Leo. He turned to see Lily Lou walking briskly toward him. Today, she was wearing a pleated white skirt with a loose, matcha green cardigan, giving her an aura that was both gentle and fresh. Even with his clueless aesthetic sense, Leo had to admit that she knew how to dress, showcasing her beauty to its fullest. But that skirt is so tight, she'll never be able to fight for the good stuff at the cafeteria. Lily keenly noticed his gaze on her and felt a flicker of pride. She smiled brightly. So, how do I look today? She even did a little twirl in front of him. Her skirt flared like a blooming flower, releasing a faint, carefully applied perfume that was subtly intoxicating. A confident smirk played on her lips. When I, Lily Lou, go after a man, I never go into battle unprepared. She had known his class was next door and had dressed specifically for this encounter. The perfume was a special import, a so-called manslayer scent, guaranteed to work on 10 out of 10 men. Achoo! Leo sneezed. He rubbed his nose and looked apologetically at the stunned girl before him. Sorry, my allergies are acting up. That smell is a little strong. Lily. She'd miscalculated. 10 out of 10 ordinary men. This one didn't fall into that category. The hopelessly dense were a species unto themselves. Taking a deep breath, she composed herself and smiled again. Anyway, I came to find you for a reason. This Saturday is my birthday, and I've booked 2 deluxe rooms at the Imperial Lounge downtown to celebrate. You were out of town the other day, so I wanted to tell you in person. As if by magic, she produced a beautifully designed invitation from her bag and handed it to him. She looked at him with a pitiable expression. You wouldn't turn me down, would you, Leo? Leo looked at the invitation, feeling a little torn. This weekend? I already have plans. The first weekend for Leo, Hammer, Wallace, and Bertha Sue. They had planned to go to the beach not far from campus, eat, drink, hold hands, and maybe even solidify his composure a bit more. Lily seemed to guess his thoughts and raised an eyebrow. Plans? Plans with Claire Sterling. She smiled, her tone casual. You two seem to be really good friends. Not friends. We've been upgraded to a couple. Leo was about to correct her when she cut him off. It's fine. I actually invited Claire to come, too. Leo paused. He instinctively opened the invitation. In the top left corner, under the list of invitees, were 2 names, Leo, Wallace, Claire Sterling. When he looked up, Lily was giving him a radiant smile. If you see her, could you pass on a message for me? Tell her. I haven't conceded our drinking contest from last time. This time, let's see if she dares to face me again. In the end, Leo left with the invitation. Lily stood where she was, watching his retreating back. A friend for her class came up to her, confused. Lily, if you really like this Leo guy, why would you invite Claire Sterling? Everyone at Berkeley knows how close they are now. Lily watched him disappear, a small smile on her face. Clothes? What kind of clothes? They're just classmates. And as long as they're just classmates, I have every right to compete. Besides, she paused, a proud curve to her lips. I lost last time. This time, I'm going to win. Right in front of her. That evening, during his dinner date with his girlfriend at the cafeteria, Leo casually mentioned Lily's birthday and handed her the invitation. He made sure to add, it's up to you. If you don't want to go, we won't. Her response, however, was unexpected. We're going. Why wouldn't we? Claire glanced at the invitation, then set it down with a calm air. It would be rude to refuse such a heartfelt invitation. We should show the birthday girl some respect. She said it so casually, but at the same time, a playful smile touched her lips. How wonderful. She dares to choose her opponents. There were 2 days left until the weekend. In that time, life on campus proceeded as usual. News of Lily Lou's birthday party spread, causing a stir of discussion and excitement. Those who received an invitation were beaming, feeling a sense of prestige. Those who didn't were envious and a little bitter, complaining that she was being too flashy. A birthday is a birthday. What was the big deal with formal invitations? But rumors also circulated that Lily came from a wealthy family. The 2 deluxe rooms she'd booked at the Imperial Lounge downtown had a minimum charge of $2,000 each just for drinks. This was 2007. The combined minimum was more than what a typical student spent in half a year. The staggering number made people realize that her wealth was on par with her beauty. In private, the guys of room 520, Marco, Dylan, and Leon, were stunned. Holy crap, Lily Lou is a secret heiress. Suddenly, I find her even more charming. What do I do? My stomach's not feeling great. I could really go for something soft, like a life of ease. If I were Leo, having to choose between a rich beauty and Bertha, that'd be a tough call. They all knew that Lily had specifically sought out Leo to give him the invitation and had also invited Claire. It was obvious she was making a play for him. This made them even more curious about the upcoming party. At the same time, they noticed something else. Since Leo had returned to the dorm, the frequency of his classmate dates with Bertha had increased significantly. There were other subtle changes, too. Before, it was almost always Claire who initiated things. Now, Leo was taking the lead, often calling her to ask her out to eat. And when he called, his tone was much more assertive. He didn't even use the word logical anymore. Leon cautiously added another piece of intel. I heard from someone that Bertha and Leo were kissing in front of the second classroom building. Marco and Dylan stared at him, then burst out laughing. No way. That's just a rumor. You're so gullible. They're high school classmates. A Northwood High custom. But even if it's logical, there's no way it could be that logical. There are limits to what logical can cover. Over those 2 days, the new couple, Leo Hammer and Bertha Sue, acted as they normally did. They didn't make a special effort to announce their relationship to friends. For one, it was quieter that way, avoiding an immediate campus-wide sensation. For another, neither of them really cared about keeping it a secret. But ever since Claire had seen Lily's invitation, she seemed to have changed her mind, deciding to postpone the official announcement. According to her, it should be saved for a more suitable occasion. Announcing it beforehand, she said with a tone of mock thoughtfulness, might upset certain people. In reality, her words were laced with hidden menace. Simultaneously, the miniature empress in her mind sat on a throne, exuding a lazy, confident aura, a playful smile on her lips. Let's just see what kind of waves some people think they can make on their birthday. Seeing his girlfriend lost in thought, Leo called her name twice. What are you thinking about? She looked up, her expression instantly returning to one of pure innocence. Nothing. Then, before he could react, she rose on her toes and stole a quick kiss. Leo was caught completely off guard. Why'd you do that again? Claire replied nonchalantly. You looked cute. Can I kiss you? Being called cute made him blush, but he couldn't help the swell of happiness in his chest. Why, you can. But maybe give me a heads up next time. A heads up would have been good, because at that exact moment, the trio from room 520 happened to be walking by. They were in the middle of a heated debate. If Leo really had to choose between Bertha and Lily, whose side should they take? Then, they looked up and saw the exact moment Claire stood on her toes to steal a kiss. In an instant, all three of them froze solid. They stood there, dumbstruck, watching Leo and Claire walk away, hand in hand. Dylan's voice trembled. Did they just kiss? Leon was in shock, his voice equally shaky as he sought his roommate's opinions. Is this also logical? Marco swallowed hard. It should be. A Northwood High custom. Maybe that's part of it. Goddamn Northwood High. Dylan's voice was strained. Marco, I don't think I can make this logical anymore. Leon mumbled, Me neither. Marco took a deep breath, his jaw set with grim determination. No, we have to make it logical, even if it isn't. On Saturday, the day of Lily's birthday, Leo and Marco left the dorm together in the evening, as they were both members of the arts committee and had been invited. They went to pick up Claire at her dorm. She came down shortly after. She was dressed simply in a sweater, a long black trench coat, and slim-fit jeans. No dazzling outfit, but she still radiated a cool, elegant grace. Leo walked up to her. Ready? She naturally extended her hand. Ready. They linked hands and started walking, not forgetting to call back to Marco, who was still frozen in place. Marco, what are you standing there for? Let's go. Marco snapped out of his daze and hurried to catch up. Coming. They hailed a cab at the east gate to go to the subway station. On the way, Leo and Claire sat in the back, while Marco sat in the front passenger seat. He tried his best to stay calm, but as he covertly watched them in the back, his pupils were quaking. He used to be able to rationalize everything, holding hands, talking, sitting together. That was all normal for classmates. The Maybach glided smoothly through traffic. In the back seat, Conrad Sterling closed his eyes, remarking with satisfaction, I've had many drivers over the years, Joe, but you're still the steadiest. If Claire hadn't insisted on having you, I would have brought you back to my side. Hearing the praise from his boss, Mr. Joe's expression remained calm, his hands steady on the steering wheel. Thump, thump, thump. His heartbeat was slow and even. He replied with measured calm, You're too kind, sir. Conrad smiled. No need for modesty. It's a testament to your skill. It's not easy to earn the approval of my daughter. That girl, she's never been one to get close to men, let alone spend time with one in a confined space. He patted the armrest beside him. Take this car, for example. Besides you, the driver, and me, her father, she won't let anyone else ride in this Maybach. She'd be unhappy if even one other person set foot in here. The air went silent for a moment. The Maybach. Mr. Joe. The retired soldier's powerful hands tightened on the steering wheel, going rigid. His face was unreadable. His voice, strained but steady, came back. You are right, sir. But Conrad was on a roll. He opened his eyes and looked out at the traffic. That girl, ever since her mother passed away, her personality has become so cold, it's almost reclusive. She doesn't even care for her own relatives, let alone outsiders. Sometimes, I wish she would make some friends at school. His voice was filled with a mix of melancholy and affection. It was rare for the decisive chairman of Summit Group to show this fatherly, emotional side, and he only did so in front of his most trusted subordinate. He changed the subject, a hint of satisfaction in his voice. But a personality like that is also reassuring. Other kids start dating in high school, getting distracted, but her? I doubt she's ever even had a proper conversation with a boy. The retired soldier's hands on the steering wheel went rigid again. His heart rate inexplicably ticked up a notch. Thump, thump, thump. Conrad continued enthusiastically. If I ever saw her holding hands with some boy, the odds of that are probably lower than me getting hit by a meteorite right now, sitting in this car. Ha ha ha. He cracked another joke, his hearty laughter filling the Maybach. The Maybach. Mr. Joe glanced nervously at the sky. You are right, sir. The conversation seemed to have stirred a longing for his daughter. Conrad sighed. It's been years since I've seen her properly. Business has been so busy, fighting battles in the South, then here in East Bay. I've neglected her, even though she's understanding and never says anything. I'm sure she misses her father. He seemed to make a decision, pulling out his phone. I'll give her a call. Let her know her dad is coming to see her. It'll make her happy. He dialed the number and put on speaker, a smile on his face. The phone rang twice, then stopped abruptly. The number you have dialed is currently busy. Please try again later. The flat, mechanical voice echoed in the car. The atmosphere suddenly stilled. Conrad blinked, then laughed it off. She must have misclicked. Silly girl. So excited to see her father's call that she can't even press the right button. I'll call again. At the same moment, Leo, Claire, and Marco were exiting the subway station. A phone rang from Claire's pocket. Without looking, she reached in and silenced it. Leo looked at her curiously. Who's that? They called a few times. Aren't you going to answer? Her expression was serene. No one I know. Wrong number. Probably a telemarketer. Leo nodded, understanding. Man, those telemarketers are persistent these days. Claire gave a slight nod. Her expression non-committal. It's not important. Let's go. She raised her arm, naturally extending her hand to him. Leo, just as naturally, took it in his. They walked out of the station, holding hands, leaving Marco trailing behind. Watching their brazenly affectionate display, Marco's pupils quaked again. Holy shit, they're holding hands like a real couple. Mister. Joe's pupils were also quaking, albeit discreetly. Back in the Maybach. The number you have dialed is currently busy. Please try again later. The mechanical voice droned on for the sixth time. The atmosphere in the car had become thick and awkward. It was one thing for his precious daughter to misclick once. Misclicking 6 times in a row was harder to explain. Conrad was momentarily stunned. He recovered, forcing a smile. She must be busy with something, can't get to her phone. I'll send her a text. Having found a logical explanation, the chairman's spirits lifted. He picked up his phone and began writing a message with his stylus on the resistive touchscreen, telling his daughter he would be passing by the Imperial Lounge and would love to see her. He sent the message, a satisfied look on his face, and waited for her excited reply. A moment later, the phone pinged. Her reply had arrived. Conrad chuckled. See? She replied quickly. Can't wait to see her old dad. He eagerly opened the message. It was indeed from his daughter. It was concise. Just 2 words. Not free. The car was silent. The expectant smile on the chairman's face froze. From the driver's seat, Mr. Joe shot a quick, furtive glance at his boss in the rearview mirror, then immediately looked away. Conrad struggled to regain his composure. Ah, well, my daughter. She says she's stuck with some classmates and can't get away. Sent a whole message crying about it. Such a big girl, and still cries when she can't see her father. It's no big deal. We can just see each other next time. His tone was calm, nonchalant. It was the chairman of Summit Group, desperately trying to salvage his dignity. After exiting the subway station, they were only a short walk from the Imperial Lounge, where Lily was hosting her party. As they walked, Leo looked at Claire, who had just put her phone away. Who were you texting? She answered casually, her expression placid. No one. That telemarketer. I told him if he calls again, I'm reporting him. Oh, Leo said, only half believing her. She glanced at him, a smirk playing on her lips. What? Are you getting jealous because I'm texting someone else? The question flustered him. Who's jealous? I'm not. I was just asking. Her smirk widened. You totally are. Don't deny it. I'm not. You are. Bertha sue that slander. I'll sue you for defamation. Okay, mister. Jealous. They bickered all the way there, but their hands remained firmly intertwined. Marco trailed miserably behind them, a stampede of alpacas raging in his mind. Are you kidding me? You're not even trying to hide it anymore, are you? Is it logical for classmates to get jealous? Hell no. Damn you, happy couples. Damn this sickeningly sweet smell of love. I'll kill you all. A few minutes later, the 3 of them arrived at the Imperial Lounge. They stood under the massive sign, looking up in awe. Even with his knowledge of the future, Leo had to admit the entrance and lobby were impressively grand, holding their own even against venues from a decade later. In 2007 East Bay, this place was the undisputed king. No wonder a single deluxe room had a $2,000 minimum. They entered the lobby and were immediately greeted by 2 tall, beautifully dressed hostesses. They smiled warmly, their eyes lighting up when they saw Leo, then shifting to a mix of awe and self-consciousness when they saw Claire. When their gaze fell on Marco, they simply skipped over him. Marco, I don't know why, but I feel like they just insulted me without saying a word. The hostesses politely asked if they had a reservation. Leo gave them the room number, and they were led through an elegantly decorated corridor to the room for Lily's party. When they pushed open the door, they saw the room was already filled with people. Lily had booked 2 rooms, and this one was specifically for members of the Humanities Arts Committee. Most of the faces were familiar. The committee members greeted them enthusiastically, but when their eyes fell on the intertwined hands of Leo and Claire, a ripple of shock and complex emotions went through the room. They quickly forced themselves to act normal, reasoning internally, it's fine. They're just classmates holding hands. It's a Northwood High custom. We all know. Goddamn Northwood High. Marco saw the looks on their faces and sneered inwardly. Just you wait. You're all about to get the shock of your lives. You think I'm going to suffer this psychological damage alone? Not a chance. Not everyone had arrived yet, including the birthday girl herself, so the party hadn't officially started. But Leo saw the tables already stacked high with beer and liquor and knew it was going to be a wild night. He leaned over and whispered to Claire, I'm going to run to the convenience store. She turned to him, a questioning look in her eyes. For what? To get some yogurt drinks and snacks for you, he explained. To line your stomach so you don't get drunk later. Claire had no intention of getting into a drinking contest tonight, and besides, with her tolerance, it was unlikely she'd get drunk anyway. But hearing his concern softened her gaze. She nodded. Okay, come back soon. She squeezed his hand, a small smile playing on her lips. If you're gone too long, I'll miss you. Leo froze, a blush creeping up his neck, but he felt a warmth spread through his chest. Okay. Marco, standing right next to them, heard every word. His composure finally cracked. Oh, miss, are you even human? Why are you 2 ganging up on me? After saying a brief goodbye to the others, Leo left the room, his mood light and his steps jaunty. As he walked down the corridor and rounded a corner, he ran into a group of people coming the other way. It happened so suddenly that he didn't have time to react, and he bumped shoulders with one of them. They both stumbled. Before Leo could even get his balance and see who it was, the person exploded. Shit, the hell you looking at, asshole? Leo finally looked up and saw the group. They were all young men in their early 20s, dressed in flashy, ostentatious clothes. One was even wearing sunglasses indoors at night. They all had an arrogant, aggressive air about them. They didn't look like good news. The one he'd bumped into had a classic 2007 spiky hairdo and was glaring at him, spewing a stream of curses. Leo frowned, but since he was partly at fault, he didn't argue. He just nodded and apologized. Sorry, my bad. The spiky-haired guy's eyes widened. Sorry? You think that's the end of it? You piece of... He was about to continue when a friend pulled him back. Forget it. Don't cause trouble. It's Lou's night. He won't be happy if we make a scene. The name Lou seemed to have a magical effect. The guy instantly calmed down, though he shot one last glare at Leo and pointed a finger. You got lucky. Then the group swaggered past him and headed toward the back rooms. A bond between men can be forged through small, unspoken gestures. A shared light. A borrowed cigarette. In his past life, Leo had been a smoker. Though not heavily addicted, he'd have 1 or 2 when work got stressful. After being reborn, he'd kicked the bad habit. But seeing someone short on cash for a pack of smokes, he could sympathize. So he offered to help. Besides, for some reason, he felt a strange sense of familiarity with this middle-aged man, as if he'd seen him somewhere before. Maybe it was just chemistry? Conrad Sterling also found himself liking the young man. It wasn't just because he'd saved him from an awkward moment. It was the boy's demeanor, a calm, easygoing confidence that lacked the restless arrogance of his peers. It naturally put one at ease. They walked out of the convenience store. Conrad lit a cigarette and took a long drag, a look of satisfaction on his face. This was the heart of East Bay's bustling downtown. Looking at the towering skyscrapers and the endless flow of traffic, he felt a wave of nostalgia. When I was 20, I first came to East Bay to make my way, he mused. It wasn't nearly this lively back then. 20 years have flown by. I've lost most of that fearless drive I used to have. Now, I'm much more cautious. Leo, listening beside him, felt a sense of connection and added, when you're 20, you feel like a hammer and everything looks like a nail. You're eager to take a swing. After 30, you become the nail, and any hammer can take a whack at you, and you just have to take it. You fight hard when you're young. You protect yourself when you're older. Something like that, right? It was just an offhand remark, but it made Conrad pause. He turned and looked the young man up and down, surprised. You got that kind of insight at your age? Leo waved a hand. Just something I read in a book. In reality, though he was an 18-year-old's body, he had the soul of a man in his 30s. He'd clawed his way through the tough world of work and had reached a decent height on his own. In some ways, his perspective resonated with the man beside him. The chairman's interest was piqued. He was in no hurry to return to his Maybach. He struck up a conversation with Leo. The more they talked, the more surprised Conrad became. The young man not only had profound insights, but also shared many of his own views on social trends and business directions. Sometimes he'd make a point so sharp it was enlightening. Conrad's admiration for the young man grew, and his attitude became friendlier. "You've got a lot of knowledge, my young friend," he said warmly. "It's rare to find someone so easy to talk to. I may be a generation older than you, but let's not worry about that. We'll speak as equals. You call me Conrad." Leo didn't object. Given his real age, it felt natural. "All right, Conrad." Conrad nodded, pleased. The two clueless men had no idea what a ridiculously tangled web of relationships they had just woven as they continued their cheerful conversation. Conrad looked at his new friend with growing appreciation. "You must still be in school, right?" Leo nodded. "Yeah, just started college." Conrad was surprised. "Really? What a coincidence. I have a daughter who also started college this year." He sighed wistfully. "Time flies. She used to be just a little girl with pigtails. Now, in the blink of an eye, she's a young woman making her own decisions." He looked at Leo and asked with a grin, "So, you're free in college now. Got a girlfriend yet?" Leo scratched his head, a little embarrassed. Yeah, we just got together." Thinking of his girlfriend's stunning beauty, he couldn't help but add with a swell of pride, "She's really beautiful." Conrad laughed. "Is that so? Well, you haven't met my daughter. My precious girl is a real beauty, too." His voice was filled with a similar pride. Leo glanced at Conrad, but didn't say anything. His inner cartoon self pouted. "Your daughter might be pretty, but she can't be as pretty as my girlfriend." Conrad glanced back at Leo, saw his unconvinced expression, and snorted internally. "This kid has no idea. Your girlfriend can't possibly compare to my precious daughter." They silently and secretly sized each other up for a moment. But then, thinking of his daughter who was not free to see him, Conrad's mood became complicated again. "But she's really grown up now," he said with a sigh. "More beautiful and more accomplished every day. The thought of some punk eventually stealing her away, it just doesn't sit right with me as a father." Leo could understand. If some guy ran off with the precious daughter he had raised, he'd be furious too. What father didn't adore his daughter? He offered some heartfelt advice. "Then you'd better keep a close eye on her. Don't let some punk take advantage." Conrad nodded grimly. "Of course. Anyone who dares to mess with my daughter in East Bay, I'll destroy them." He ended with a cold, teeth-gritting sneer, all corporate decorum forgot. Then he looked at Leo and offered some advice of his own. "You two, you're dating, right? Her family doesn't know yet, do they? If she's as beautiful as you say, her dad is definitely on high alert. You'd better be careful not to get caught. Better to seal the deal first. Your big brother has experience in this area." Leo nodded eagerly, utterly convinced. "I'll take that to heart." And so, the two men, one old and one young, launched into a detailed discussion on the topics of how to stop a punk from stealing your daughter and how to avoid capture by your girlfriend's dad. Inside the Rose Room, the most luxurious suite at the Imperial Lounge, Claire Sterling looked up at Lily Liu and spoke with a casual smile. In that instant, the two young women became the undeniable center of the room. Lily, the birthday girl, was exquisitely dressed and moved with the grace of a princess. The glow of being the star of the evening made her appear vibrant and radiant. Claire, by contrast, was dressed down in a simple sweater, jeans, and a long black trench coat. But even in such a casual outfit, as she stood there with her hands in her pockets, she projected an effortless aura of cool, languid composure. She had the mature confidence of a quintessential femme fatale, an irresistible magnetism that subtly captivated everyone. Almost imperceptibly, she was once again overshadowing the sweet, lovely queen of the arts department. The arts council students in the room secretly scored the two women in their heads. Lily 9, 5 tonight. Claire, the campus queen, 10. Then, factoring in the jaw-dropping moment just minutes earlier when she'd leaned in to kiss a certain someone on the cheek. Campus queen gets another 100 points. Game over. She's already won. The students glanced sympathetically at Lily, offering a moment of silent condolence for her inevitable defeat. Lily's gaze was fixed on Claire. A bright smile spread across her face as she walked over to them, projecting an air of warmth and intimacy. "Claire, you came. Welcome to my birthday party. I didn't get a chance to see you last week, so I specifically asked Leo to invite you for me." She paused, her beautiful eyes sweeping over Leo with a flirtatious charm. "And Leo was sweet enough to do me the favor." It was a masterclass in subtle manipulation. A simple relayed invitation was spun into something more, artfully closing the distance between herself and Leo. It painted a picture of a special, close relationship, designed to spark romantic speculation in anyone listening. Claire, however, remained perfectly composed. She smiled faintly. That's right. He didn't want to come originally. She continued, her voice light, but I had a little talk with him. I told him since it's your birthday, the least he could do is show up and pay his respects. The words were a perfect counterstrike. Not only did she expose the truth, Leo had zero interest in your birthday party, but she also framed it as I'm the one doing you this favor, and Leo is only here because I told him to be. It was a casual, devastating display of her influence over him, one that was far more convincing than Lily's subtle hints. The students' eyes went wide. They looked at Claire as if she were a goddess of social warfare. Holy shit, is this the level Claire Sterling operates on? A one-hit KO. Lily's pupils contracted for a fraction of a second before her smile returned, seamless as ever. Is that so? That's just like you, Claire. Even though you and Leo were just desk partners, he still hangs on your every word. You say have a talk, and he listens. Anyone who knows you'd think you were just high school classmates. Anyone who doesn't might think you're an older sister scolding her little brother. Her tone was nonchalant, but the implication was sharp. She twisted Claire's talk into a scolding, painting Claire as bossy and unreasonable. A collective gasp went through the room. Holy shit, Lily's counterattack. She's back in the game. But faced with Lily's verbal jab, Claire seemed completely unfazed. She just smiled serenely. You're right, she said, her voice smooth as silk. This kid is pretty obedient. No defense, no denial. She simply owned it. And with that, Lily's attack dissipated, like a punch thrown into a pillow. But what happened next was what truly shattered everyone's composure. As if to prove her point, Claire casually reached out and affectionately ruffled Leo's hair. It was an act of breathtaking intimacy, a declaration of sovereignty. A low, shocked murmur rippled through the suite. The students felt their scalps tingle. Holy shit, that's a straight-up execution. Caught between the two women, Leo was the only one confused. A question mark appeared over his head. Seriously? You guys are having a conversation. What does my head have to do with it? Lily's expression froze. It took her a long moment to force another smile. It seems you two really are very close. She couldn't continue down that path. She was losing too badly. Wisely, she pivoted. Anyway, she announced, her voice bright and commanding as she turned to the rest of the room. I'm so glad everyone could make it tonight and show me some love. Looks like we're all here, so let's get this party started. No holding back. Everyone have fun. We're not leaving till we're all drunk. It was an impressive recovery. One moment she was locked in a psychological battle with Claire. The next she was the perfect hostess, her radiant smile and confident energy returning as if nothing had happened. The students, taking their cue, immediately started cheering and hyping up the party, eager to dispel the tense atmosphere. Claire didn't seem to mind Lily's strategic retreat. With a faint smile, she guided Leo back to their spot on the sofa. As she turned away, her posture remained elegant and composed, leaving her rival with the unmistakable silhouette of a victor. The party roared back to life. Someone grabbed a microphone and started singing, while others cracked open beers, shouting for people to join them for drinking games. Lily let out a quiet sigh of relief. Her best friend, who had arrived with her, sidled up and whispered with concern, Lily, that was a rough start. I told you, you shouldn't have invited Claire Sterling. I don't think you can win this. The words, meant to be comforting, only reignited Lily's competitive spirit. Her gaze drifted to the corner of the room, where Claire and Leo sat together. She took a deep breath, her eyes glinting with determination. Don't worry, she said. I'll win. Lily had booked 2 massive luxury suites for her birthday, the Rose Room and the Azalea Room. As the party officially kicked off, the deafening bass from the sound system vibrated through the walls, and the students in both rooms plunged into a joyous frenzy. As the birthday girl, Lily, in her flowing pink evening gown, drifted between the 2 suites with a glass in her hand, flawlessly playing the role of the perfect hostess. She made sure to greet and mingle with every guest in both rooms, giving everyone equal attention. However, it seemed she was, intentionally or not, spending significantly more time in the Rose Room. The reason was simple. The person she liked was in here. More importantly, her rival was in here. After her initial setback, Lily decided to change her strategy. She would play it cool for now, not wanting to appear too desperate. So, when she made her rounds in the Rose Room, she deliberately skipped over Leo and Claire, instead laughing and drinking with the other Arts Council members. But beneath this casual facade, her eyes kept darting toward the sofa in the corner. All she saw was Leo and Claire sitting side by side, their proximity intimate, whispering and smiling about something. They were completely absorbed in their own private world. Their own private world. The phrase alone made a vein throb in her temple. She took a deep breath, trying to calm herself. Stay cool, Lily. Claire's just doing this to get to you. Don't lose your composure. After toasting a few more people in the Rose Room, she turned and headed for the Azalea Room next door, feigning a casual departure. But before she left, she gave her best friend a quiet, urgent order. Keep an eye on him for me. Report any developments immediately. Her friend was a loyal soldier. While Lily was laughing with guests next door, her friend became a covert operative, shuttling between the two rooms and delivering a stream of intel. They're just talking, no unusual movements yet. Some other guys try to get Leo to play a game. Claire stared them down, and they backed off. A girl tried to go toast Leo. She didn't even get within 10 feet before Claire's aura sent her running for her life, still clutching her drink. Marco Shaw went over to drink with Leo. Wait, no, it looks like he's standing guard for them. He's become their personal security. Then came the final report, the one that broke the camel's back. I think Claire is playing with Leo's fingers. Playing with his fingers. Those 3 words shattered Lily's composure. A fire of jealousy raged within her. Why? Just because you were desk partners, you get to play with his fingers? I want to play with his fingers, too. All thoughts of etiquette and polite hosting vanished. Lily gathered the hem of her pink gown, grabbed her drink, and stormed back into the Rose Room. She pushed open the door, breezed past the ever-loyal Marco, and marched straight to the sofa. She sat down next to Leo and Claire with an air of perfect casual grace. I'm a little tired from all the drinking, she said with a smile. Mind if I sit here for a bit? As she spoke, she looked up and immediately saw Leo's hand held openly and shamelessly in Claire's. Lily's pupils narrowed. She feigned nonchalance. You're sitting right next to each other, and you're still holding hands? You two must have been really good desk partners. Claire smiled faintly, her tone light. It's nothing. It's cold in here, so I'm just using his hand as a personal heater. Leo, without batting an eye, added with righteous conviction, You're welcome. It's my duty. It's my duty to keep my girlfriend's hands warm. Besides, Bertha Sue's hands are so soft and nice to hold. Lily was speechless. We're in a luxury suite at the Imperial Lounge with the heat blasting, and you two are telling me you need a hand warmer because it's cold. A stampede of 1,000 furious alpacas thundered through her mind. If you're going to make up an excuse, at least make it a believable one. Other students glanced over, saw the scene, and immediately lost interest. They were numb to it by now. A hand warmer? Whatever. Just another one of those Northwood High customs, added to the list. As long as it's reasonable, it's fine. Oh, and also, screw you, Northwood High. Deep breath. Another deep breath. Lily forced herself to calm down again. She turned to Leo, her smile returning. It's no fun just sitting here. Leo, do you know how to play pool? I've always wanted to try. How about you teach me? The suite was spacious and fully equipped, complete with a bar and a pool table. Lily's invitation was delivered with a soft, captivating vulnerability that few could refuse. But Leo could. Teach you how to play pool. Leo's brow furrowed. A memory from the summer after graduation suddenly flashed in his mind. This feels incredibly familiar. He looked at Lily, a wave of suspicion washing over him. Wait a minute. You already know how to play, don't you? You're just pretending you don't, so I'll teach you. Lily froze. She was completely baffled. Wait, since when did his brain start working so well? Leo, however, was having a full-blown flashback. The humiliation at the pool hall with his middle school friends was still fresh in his mind. He had tried to act like a pro, only to be completely shown up by his campus queen girlfriend. It was a major blow to his pride. With that memory fueling him, he refused flatly. Nope, not teaching you. Sitting beside him, Claire watched the exchange with a slight, knowing smile. A miniature Q version of herself lounged on a throne in her mind, chin resting on her hand, looking utterly relaxed. Oh, little girl, she thought, that's on my old moves. The tricks you're using are seriously outdated. With her first plan foiled, Lily was forced to abandon her direct assault. Taking another deep breath, she turned to Claire and smiled sweetly. Claire, do you know how to play? How about we have a match? Claire raised an eyebrow, her expression unreadable. What are the stakes? A competitive fire lit up in Lily's eyes. One shot of straight whiskey, no chaser for every game. Claire's calm demeanor didn't change. And if someone runs the table? Without a moment's hesitation, Lily gritted her teeth. Then it's 3 shots. Leo, listening from the side, couldn't help but feel a pang of pity for the birthday girl. He opened his mouth to try and warn her. Even with her high tolerance, downing 9 straight shots of whiskey was too much for Lily. Her best friend rushed over and helped her to a sofa to rest. Slumped against the cushions, Lily sipped a glass of warm water and slowly regained some of her senses. Her friend leaned in and whispered, "Maybe you should just let it go. Leo isn't the only great guy out there. You don't have to fight Claire for him." Lily took a moment to steady herself, but shook her head stubbornly. She wasn't ready to give up. She had heard Claire's words by the pool table, even in her drunken haze, but she wasn't convinced. Promises made by a couple of teenagers who've barely turned 20 don't carry much weight. It just sounds naive and reckless. At this age, no matter how close you are, you're still just high school desk partners. What have they possibly gone through? Some life-altering, dramatic ordeal? A heart-wrenching, tragic separation? Impossible. Lily rubbed her tired eyes, her gaze falling on the 2 figures across the room. She managed a faint smile. "It's fine. I still have a chance." On the other side of the suite, Claire found Leo by the karaoke machine. He had just put down his microphone. Seeing her approach, he asked, "All done?" Claire nodded with a simple hum and made a clean, decisive throat-slitting gesture. Annihilated her. Her tone was light, but the declaration was utterly dominant. Leo looked completely unsurprised. It was exactly what he'd expected. Claire's eyes fell on the microphone in Leo's hand. "Singing?" He nodded. "Want to sing one together?" "Sure," Leo agreed readily, scrolling through the playlist until he found Lucky by Jason Mraz and Colby Calais. It was the same song they'd sung at the Vault during their graduation dinner. Their classic, signature duet. Only now, they could openly call it a love song. A couple singing a love song together. It was fitting. It was perfect. As the melody began, Leo and Claire, each holding a microphone, watched the music video on the screen and sang in perfect harmony. His voice was calm and soothing, warm like the sun. Hers was cool yet gentle, utterly captivating. Their voices blended seamlessly. The other students watched with envy and listened with aching hearts. "Fine, go ahead and sing. Who could possibly outsing you two?" It's their signature duet, of course. Another damn Northwood High custom. At this point, just make Lucky the official anthem of Northwood High. One student, consumed by a jealous rage he couldn't swallow, sidled up to Marco Shaw. "Hey, where exactly is this Northwood High?" he asked. "I'm thinking of taking a trip this winter break. I'd love to visit, maybe bring some local souvenirs. It would be great if I could meet the principal or their homeroom teacher." The party in the Rose Room raged on with drinking, singing, and games, the atmosphere loud and cheerful. But in the middle of it all, a small, unsettling incident occurred. As the students were getting rowdy, the door to the suite was suddenly pushed open. A beautiful young woman in a red dress stumbled in, nearly falling. A quick-thinking Arts Council member near the door caught her, asking if she was okay. But the woman seemed disoriented. When he questioned her, she mumbled incoherently, her voice filled with panic. Before the student could ask more, 2 flashy-looking young men rushed over. They grabbed the woman by each arm, propping her up. "She's our friend, had a little too much to drink," one of them said dismissively. Wandered off. They started to lead her away. The Arts Council student, feeling something was wrong, tried to follow and ask more questions. But the other young man stopped, turned, and shot him a vicious glare. "Mind your own damn business," he snarled. "Get lost." The threat sent a chill down the student's spine, and he immediately backed off. The commotion by the door was brief. With the loud music and crowded room, Leo and Claire, sitting in the corner, only vaguely heard it. They couldn't see what was happening through the crowd. When Leo stood up to get a better look, they were already gone. A frown creased his forehead. He'd had a strange feeling earlier, and now it was stronger. But he couldn't put his finger on it. Just then, a tipsy Marco stumbled over, insisting he have another drink, and Leo had to push the nagging thought to the back of his mind. At the same moment, down the hall in the peony room, another luxury suite, the 2 young men half-dragged, half-forced the woman in the red dress back inside. They shoved her into the room, and she collapsed to the floor. "Vince, we got her," one of them said. The woman fell to her knees. Though disoriented, she clasped her hands together, begging incoherently. "Please, let me go. Please." A young man got up from the sofa and walked over. He was lean and handsome, with fair skin, but his face was contorted with a chilling malice. He bent down, grabbed a handful of the woman's hair, and yanked her head up until their faces were inches apart. She cried out in pain. His expression turned savage. "Trying to run, you bitch? Did Vince Lou say you could run? With that, he swung his hand and slapped her hard across the face. Crack! The force was so brutal, it sent her sprawling onto the floor, unconscious. The man, Vince, stood up unconcerned. He shook his hand as if wiping something disgusting off, glanced at the woman on the floor, and ordered the other two, "Watch everyone closely. My boss is coming to pick them up later." The two men nodded respectfully. At the same time, a low murmur of agreement echoed from other parts of the room. There were more of them. Vince Liu rubbed his hands together, his face a mask of greed as his eyes swept over the suite. On the sofas, slumped in various positions, were the unconscious bodies of several other young women. It was a horrifying sight. In his previous life, around 2008, Leo had read a news article about a crime ring operating out of a karaoke bar in the city. A group of men in their 20s and 30s were luring young women, drugging them, and assaulting them. Afterward, they would sell the victims through illicit channels into forced prostitution. The ring had started its operations in early 2007 and wasn't busted until 2008. The case had sent shockwaves through the city, which was why it had stuck in Leo's memory. Reborn, Leo suddenly pieced it all together. He finally understood why this place had felt so familiar. The karaoke bar from the news report, the gang's base of operations, was the Imperial Lounge, and the specific room was the Peony Suite. The moment he had stepped inside and seen the unconscious women on the sofas in the dim light, and the young man standing up, even in the shadows, his face was recognizable. It was him, the man from a newspaper photo, one of the ringleaders. A cold dread washed over Leo. He knew how dangerous this situation was, but he didn't let a trace of it show on his face. He kept up his apologetic act, bowing repeatedly. "I'm so sorry, so sorry." Vince Liu stood there, watching him, his eyes cold and assessing. One of his lackeys grew impatient. "Shit, if you're in the wrong room, then get the hell out." Leo nodded quickly, a sheepish grin plastered on his face. Right. We're leaving. Sorry to bother you." He grabbed Lily and began backing slowly out of the room. The second the door closed behind them, the smile vanished from Leo's face. He tightened his grip on Lily's arm and started moving quickly back toward their suite. Lily finally pulled his hand away from her mouth. "What are you doing?" she asked frantically. "Inside that room, all those girls, it looked like they were." "Don't talk," Leo cut her off in a low, urgent voice. "Just get back to the room." In that moment, all of his usual laid-back demeanor was gone. His expression was grave, his eyes sharp and cold. The sheer intensity radiating from him was enough to silence Lily. She stopped struggling and hurried along with him. They moved in silence until they were back inside the rose room. Leo glanced down the hallway to make sure no one had followed them before quickly shutting and locking the door. Only then did he let out a quiet breath. Claire noticed them the moment they entered, her sharp eyes immediately catching the grim look on Leo's face. She was on her feet in an instant, moving to his side. "What's wrong?" she asked softly. Leo took a deep breath and, in a hushed voice, quickly explained the situation, leaving out the parts about being reborn and seeing it in the news. He simply said that he and Lily had stumbled into the peony room by mistake, saw what was happening, and suspected a serious crime was in progress. Marco, who had wandered over, listened with wide, disbelieving eyes. "Are you serious? In a place like this, in this day and age? Who would be that bold?" "Leo, are you sure you didn't get it wrong?" Leo shook his head, about to speak, but Claire cut in first. "I believe him." Leo paused, turning to look at her. Her expression was calm and serious. She repeated, "I believe you." In truth, Claire was just as shaken. As another person who had been reborn, she had also seen that news report in her past life. Leo's explanation jogged her memory instantly. Lily, who had never experienced anything like this, was now completely sobered by fear. What do we do now?" she stammered. "Should we call the police? Or tell the front desk and let the KTV handle it?" "No," Leo and Claire said in unison. They both paused, instinctively looking at each other. Leo explained first, his voice low. "We're calling the cops, obviously, but we can't say anything to the staff here." Claire picked up the thread seamlessly. If they're able to operate so openly here, they probably have lookouts among the KTV staff. Telling them will just tip them off. The two of them, speaking one after the other, left Marco and Lily stunned. Lily was baffled. "Wait, are all desk partners from Northwood High this in sync?" Marco was just blown away. "Holy shit, how are these two so sharp? This is some next-level couple's intuition." Of course, it was because they shared the same cheat code, rebirth. But neither of them knew that about the other, and the urgency of the situation left no time for such thoughts. Leo continued quickly, "They let us go for now, but they might be suspicious. They're probably armed with knives. If they come after us, it'll be dangerous. Claire nodded. If that's the case, our numbers won't help. Most of the people here are girls. We need to get everyone out. The party's over. She looked at Lily. Make up an excuse to get everyone to leave. Don't tell them the truth. It'll cause a panic. Their thinking was clear and calm. In a few sentences, they had laid out the plan and the stakes. Marco and Lily, who had been panicking just moments before, found themselves calmed by their methodical approach. A sense of security settled over them. They finalized the plan. Marco would handle getting the Arts Council students in the Rose Room to leave. Lily would go to the Azalea Room to evacuate her other friends. As Lily hurried out the door, Leo took a steadying breath and pulled out his phone to call the police. He turned to Claire. You should go with them. I'll stay here and keep an eye on things. I'm staying too, she interrupted. Leo stared at her. Her expression was calm and resolute. I'm a better fighter than you are, she stated simply. A small smile touched Leo's lips. He couldn't argue with that, but he could feel the unwavering determination in her gaze. Inside the Rose Room, the situation flipped in a way no one could have possibly anticipated. The Arts Council students, Vince Lou's thugs, everyone, they were all still processing what was happening when Leo smashed a beer bottle over Vince's head, used the momentum to slam him against the wall, and pressed the jagged edge to his throat. The move was so sudden, so shockingly violent, that it short-circuited every brain in the room. In truth, Leo's entire assault came down to one thing: speed. It was too fast for anyone to react. He had used a facade of humility to close the distance, then seamlessly transitioned from a casual walk to smashing a bottle and pinning his target. The entire sequence was fluid, executed without a shred of hesitation. It was simple in theory, but it required a level of cold-blooded decisiveness that was terrifying to behold. Staring at the calm expression on Leo's face as he held Vince completely immobile, the thugs had the most absurd thought. Wait a second, who's the bad guy here? The Arts Council students snapped out of their daze, their faces breaking into looks of ecstatic joy. They gazed at Leo with the kind of adoration usually reserved for gods and rock stars. Some of the girls, forgetting the danger they were in, were practically swooning. He's so hot. I want to marry him. Marco stared at his roommate, utterly dumbfounded. A strange thought crossed his mind. I mean, I'm a guy, but for Leo, maybe it wouldn't be so bad. The cold, sharp edge of the broken bottle pressed against his neck finally brought Vince back to his senses. His head was spinning and throbbing with pain. He could feel warm, sticky blood trickling down his forehead. He stared at Leo in disbelief, his eyes wide. You mother... The glass pressed deeper, cutting off his curse. Leo looked at the hate-filled young man and spoke again, his voice perfectly level. Tell your men to drop their knives and give our people their phones back. Don't move. I get nervous easily, and my hand might slip. Vince almost laughed in fury, as if he'd never heard such a threat. You're threatening me? Have you ever even held a knife? Ever stabbed someone? Go on, try it. I dare you. Before the words were even out of his mouth, the jagged glass bit into his neck, drawing a thin line of blood. There was no hesitation. You. Vince froze, a jolt of fear overriding his anger. Leo's expression didn't change. You want to bet on whether I dare? Fear began to creep into Vince's heart, but with his men watching, he tried to maintain his tough guy act. Do you have any idea who I am? Leo nodded, his tone casual. I do. Leo stared into the eyes of the man from the newspaper photo, a cold light in his own. I know who you are. I know who you work for, and who works for you. I know what you've done, and I know what you're planning to do next. His calm, emotionless delivery made the words even more chilling. Vince's scalp prickled. Who the hell are you? Leo shook his head. Who I am doesn't matter. What matters is that I think you're stalling. So hurry it up. If you don't do what I say, my hand is going to start shaking again. As if to prove his point, he applied a fraction more pressure to the glass shard against Vince's neck. Vince finally broke. He had no idea who this kid was. He looked young and harmless, but he acted with the cold, calculated experience of a man who had spent decades in the criminal underworld. Gritting his teeth, he finally gave the order. Drop your weapons. Give them back their phones. His thugs exchanged uneasy glances. Vince was their boss. Reluctantly, they began to lower their knives. Leo felt a wave of relief. He was about to tell the students to grab their phones and call the police when suddenly, the situation changed again. A calm, even voice came from outside the room. The voice was unhurried, yet it carried an undeniable weight, a palpable sense of pressure. Everyone instinctively looked toward the door. A portly, bald man in a traditional open-front jacket walked in, a placid, almost friendly smile on his face. Behind him were four powerfully built men, their eyes cold and vicious. The moment they entered, the atmosphere in the room shifted. The air grew thick and heavy, the sense of dread multiplying tenfold. Leo's eyes narrowed. His heart sank. Vince's face lit up with manic joy. "Jian!" he screamed. In his past life, the newspaper photo from 2008 had shown several primary culprits. Vince Liu was just one of them. The true leader of the entire ring was a man named Jian Chao, 38 years old, a middle school dropout who had spent 3 years at a sports academy, where he honed his natural talent for fighting. After graduating, he quickly made a name for himself in the city's underworld with his brutal skills and ruthless methods. He had taken Vince on as his underling, with Vince responsible for procuring the women and delivering them to Jian. Jian then ran private clubs where wealthy clients could indulge their depraved tastes. He was one of the city's 20 most wanted criminals. His reputation was infamous. Leo never imagined that in this new life, he would come face to face with such a monster in a karaoke bar. "Jian, help me!" Vince yelled, seeing him as a savior. Jian didn't even glance at his subordinate. He looked directly at Leo, his smile never wavering. "Young man, let's make a deal. Let my useless little brother go." Leo met his gaze calmly and shook his head. "No. First, they drop the knives and give us our phones back. Then you all leave. After that, I'll let him go." Jian's smile widened. "Is that so?" For the students who had attended Lily Liu's birthday party, the night was an absolute roller coaster. The plot had twisted and turned with dizzying speed. It started as a normal party, morphed into a romantic drama with two girls fighting over a guy, then plunged into a crime thriller, followed by a gangster flick, and finally, somehow, ended up as a full-blown martial arts movie. And the man who showed up at the climax, holy shit, he was unreal. Was that guy an actual movie star? Even professional stuntmen weren't that good. The way he took down the entire gang left the students completely stunned, turning them into instant, die-hard fans of Mr. Zhou. Marco Shaw, in particular, had already forgotten about his roommate. He stared at Mr. Zhou with stars in his eyes. He's a bit older, but for a legendary badass like him, maybe it wouldn't be so bad. He was thinking of becoming his disciple, of course. Anyone with their mind in the gutter should go stand in the corner. On top of everything, the sheer amount of shocking information they'd learned that night was enough to make their heads spin. Not only was the Imperial Lounge a front for a massive criminal operation, but they had also discovered that Claire Sterling, the campus queen, wasn't just beautiful and elegant. Her family background was terrifyingly powerful. Summit Group? The Sterling family. The names were vaguely familiar to some Berkeley students, but many of the local kids knew the name that had once been on the cover of Forbes, Conrad Sterling. "That's..." A man who was on the cover of Forbes, one in the know, student whispered ominously to the others. That single sentence was enough to send a wave of shock and awe through the room. But even that paled in comparison to the final scene that was seared into everyone's memory. Faced with the infamous Jian, who even tied up and defeated was still snarling with feral rage, Claire had picked up a bottle and, without flinching, smashed it over his head. The cold, ruthless power she radiated in that moment was breathtaking. Cool, dominant, utterly badass. And the declaration that accompanied the blow, for simple words, is my man. The students replayed the words in their minds, and a more shocking truth began to dawn on them. Holy shit, wait a second. Does that mean they're official? My man just means my good friend. In the hallway of the police station, Claire sat on a bench, glanced at Mr. Zhou standing nearby, and explained with a perfectly straight face. "It's a new slang term we use at Berkeley." She then turned to a few of the other students waiting to give their statements. "Right, guys?" The students were bewildered. What? Since when is that a thing at Berkeley? But the moment they met Claire's cool, vaguely threatening gaze, a jolt of understanding shot through them. They started nodding furiously. "Yes, absolutely. We all say that at Berkeley. It's a term of endearment. Makes you feel closer. It's totally reasonable. Perfectly reasonable. I'll fight anyone who says it's not." They beat their chests and swore to the heavens, all while wiping imaginary sweat from their brows, remembering what had happened to Jian in the suite. If they crossed Claire, who knew when a stray bottle might find its way to their heads? It was too terrifying to contemplate. Satisfied with their enthusiastic support, Claire nodded. She turned back to Mr. Zhou and smiled sweetly. "You believe me, don't you, Mr. Zhou?" Zhou expression was as stoic as ever. He nodded. "Of course, Miss Sterling. Whatever you say." He then slowly turned his back to them, facing the wall. Internally, the retired Special Forces legend, The man who had single-handedly decimated an entire criminal gang was having a complete meltdown. His eyes, which had just started to recover, were now violently spasming. I haven't seen the young miss in a while, and my eyes are already going bad again. I have to believe her. I don't dare not believe her. Good Lord, if Mr. Sterling finds out about that scene in the suite, with the young miss going full protective lioness mode. Am I, her bodyguard and driver, going to live to see another day? A few moments later, footsteps echoed down the hall. Leo returned from the restroom, having cleaned the cut on his forehead. Claire looked up, saw him, and immediately rushed to his side. How is it? Leo waved a hand dismissively to reassure her. It's fine, just a small cut. My forehead's a little swollen, that's all. Claire frowned. Let me see. She stepped closer, their bodies almost touching. Rising onto her toes, she gently took his head in her hands and tilted it down for a closer look. The motion brought his face directly in front of her chest. Leo, holy crap. What is this wonderful bonus? The other students? Holy crap, are we allowed to see this? If we keep watching, is Claire going to smash a bottle over our heads to silence us? Mr. Joe, a second, more violent eye quake. Good Lord. Young miss, please have some restraint. How am I supposed to believe your story now? After a thorough inspection, Claire gently pushed aside his hair to get a better look at the long, 3 to 4 centimeter gash. It was fairly deep. Her brow furrowed again. We need to go to the hospital. This needs stitches. Leo, try his best not to get a nosebleed, looked up. Is that really necessary? It's just a small cut. Claire shook her head firmly. No, we're going as soon as we're done here. She looked at him, the memory of the terrifying scene in the suite still fresh in her mind, and her heart ached. Her voice softened. Listen to me. Be good. Leo froze, caught by the look in her eyes. He found himself nodding obediently. Oh, okay. The other students and Mr. Joe were completely stunned. Be good. The ex-Special Forces Commando turned bodyguard slowly turned his stiff neck to the students. I assume that's another popular saying at Berkeley, he asked, his voice strained. The students gulped, their voices trembling with uncertainty. Probably? Or maybe it's a Northwood High custom. Soon after, an officer called Leo and the others in to give their statements. The call from the Imperial Lounge had mobilized the local precinct. When they heard Jian Chong's name, they immediately called for backup from the district headquarters and descended on the scene in full force. Expecting a fierce battle, the officers had arrived armed to the teeth, ready for a major confrontation. What they found instead left them utterly speechless. The entire vicious gang was already subdued, lying on the floor. The infamous leader, Jian, was hog-tied with a bleeding gash on his head. His top lieutenant, Vince, also had a matching head wound. And the ones who had called it in were a group of college students, all from the prestigious Berkeley. The officers were flabbergasted. Berkeley, wasn't that one of the top universities in the country, right after Harvard and Yale? What was going on? Were all these students secretly martial arts masters, as skilled in combat as they were in academics? During the initial on-site questioning, the officers learned another shocking detail. Most of the students hadn't even been involved in the fight. It was just one young man and one young woman, each armed with a single beer bottle, who had taken down the two main culprits. That's how they subdued two of the city's most dangerous criminals. The officers looked at Leo and Claire with a new sense of awe. One of them discreetly asked another student, "Where did those two go to high school?" "A military academy." The student answered honestly, "I don't know. Someplace called Northwood High." He then added, with a complicated expression, "They have a lot of customs there." This left the officers even more confused, but they developed a deep, almost reverent respect for this Northwood Military Academy. Incredible. We should pay them a visit sometime. It wasn't long before they learned that the bulk of the gang had been taken down by a single middle-aged man. When Zhou Zhun presented his military discharge papers and briefly explained the situation, everything clicked into place. Reading the concise but staggering information on his ID, the more experienced officers felt a chill run down their spines. They respectfully returned the document, their entire demeanor toward him changing completely. No wonder. With a god-tier badass like him on the scene, forget Jian Chong. Even if you brought in the most notorious, toughest fighters from the city's underworld, they'd probably be respectfully offering this guy a cigarette. Giving a statement at a police station was becoming a familiar routine for Leo and Claire. It was almost comical. They had been at Berkeley for less than 4 months and had already been questioned 3 times. Anyone who didn't know better would think they were majoring in criminology. To top it off, One of the officers taking their statement was the same one who had questioned Leo at the hospital. When he saw Leo and Claire, his jaw dropped. You two again? Holy crap, are these kids cursed? Does crime just follow them wherever they go? Leo scratched his head, feeling a little sheepish. Sorry to trouble you again. He thought it was strange, too. Why did they keep stumbling into one violent crime after another? It was like they were characters in a young adult romance novel, and some sicko author was determined to turn it into a crime thriller. If an author like that really exists, he deserves to be damned. Due to the severity of the case, the station's captain was brought in. The moment he walked into the room, his eyes landed on Mr. Joe sitting in the corner. Old Commander, he exclaimed. Mr. Joe looked up, a hint of surprise on his face. Little Miller? It turned out they were old war buddies. Captain Miller was also a veteran, and his former unit was none other than Mr. Joe's elite 37th Army Blade Battalion, where he had served as a squad leader under Joe's command. Seeing his old superior, Captain Miller became incredibly solicitous, ordering officers to fetch water and rushing to offer his old commander a cigarette and a light. His fawning attitude left the other officers stunned. Was this the same iron-faced, strict captain they knew? Mr. Joe, however, accepted the treatment as if it were perfectly normal. He took the cigarette, took a long drag, and exhaled a cloud of smoke. This whole incident, he said casually, try to put it all on me. The others are good kids, top students from Berkeley. Don't get them too involved. Captain Miller nodded vigorously. Don't you worry, Commander. Mission accomplished. He then eagerly offered a cup of hot tea. Here, Commander, have some tea. Mr. Joe grunted in acknowledgement and took a slow sip. He was enjoying his moment in the spotlight. His gaze drifted over and noticed Leo and Claire holding hands under the table. Claire was happily playing with Leo's fingers, bending them back and forth, occasionally squeezing his palm. They were completely uninhibited, shamelessly affectionate. Mr. Joe choked on his tea, coughing violently. Commander, are you okay? Captain Miller asked with concern. Fine. Mr. Joe managed, wiping tea from his collar while trying to regain his composure. Internally, his eyes were spasming again. Good Lord. Young miss, please have some mercy. After finishing their statements, Leo and Claire walked out of the police station together. To their surprise, standing quietly under a tree by the entrance was a familiar figure in a pink evening gown. Lily had already given her statement and was expected to have gone home, but there she was, apparently waiting for them. Seeing them emerge, Lily gathered her dress and walked over. She looked at Leo, her expression complex, and said softly, Can I talk to you for a minute? Leo hesitated, glancing at Claire. Claire just smiled and nodded, then turned and walked a short distance away, giving them space. The night air was cold. In her thin gown, Lily's slender frame shivered slightly in the winter chill. At Claire's firm insistence, Leo reluctantly agreed to go to the hospital. He settled into the familiar back seat of the Maybach. The plush interior, the driver's seat up front, Mr. Joe at the wheel. It was all comfortingly familiar. Looking at Mr. Joe, Leo couldn't help but feel a renewed sense of awe, recalling the man's godlike combat prowess back at the karaoke lounge. You could never judge a book by its cover. Mr. Joe always seemed a bit frail, but in a crisis, he was an absolute beast. Mr. Joe, are you feeling better these days? Leo asked with genuine concern. Still feeling under the weather? Up front, the retired Special Forces legend's hands tightened slightly on the steering wheel. Much better, thank you, he answered, his voice steady. His eyes flickered to the rearview mirror, catching a glimpse of the two in the back. Miss Sterling was completely ignoring their conversation, her attention fully absorbed in playing with her new boyfriend's fingers. She pressed his hand against hers, comparing their sizes, before naturally lacing her slender, pale fingers through his. Mr. Joe's internal monologue began. I see nothing. I see nothing. What a beautiful night. The moon is so big and round. As his gaze drifted, Leo noticed a pack of cigarettes in the side door compartment. A pack of Dunhills. The brand looked vaguely familiar. Whose are these? He asked curiously. Claire glanced over, a slight arch in her eyebrow. Conrad Sterling's, she said nonchalantly. Then she added, a cool edge to her voice. You know, my cold, heartless father who's so busy with work he forgets he has a daughter for 3 years at a time. She shot a look at Mr. Joe in the driver's seat and smiled faintly. Right, Mr. Joe. A tense silence filled the front of the car before a strained voice replied. I'm sorry, miss, my mind was wandering. What did you say? I didn't hear anything. At the same time, the ex-commando was breaking out in a cold sweat, chanting a mantra in his head. You're just the driver. Family drama has nothing to do with the driver. The driver knows nothing. Leo, however, was having a moment of realization. Of course, besides his campus queen girlfriend, the only other passenger in this Maybach would be the legendary head of the Sterling family. He glanced at the pack of Dunhills again, remembering the friendly man he'd met at the convenience store near the karaoke lounge. He smoked the same brand. What a coincidence, Leo thought. But hearing the way Claire spoke about her father made him a little worried. Does your dad not know yet? He asked in a low voice. Know about us? Claire finished for him, a small smile playing on her lips as she squeezed his hand. Don't worry, he has no idea. Besides, Mr. Joe is very tight-lipped. She paused, her voice turning light and casual, but with a hint of steel. Aren't you, Mr. Joe? The battle-hardened veteran felt a shiver run down his spine. He nodded firmly, his voice steady. Yes, miss. Leo felt a wave of relief. The thought of facing the chairman of the summit group, a man of immense power and Claire's father, was incredibly intimidating. He was already feeling guilty for stealing his precious daughter, and he hadn't even met the man properly. In that moment, he found himself missing the kind, helpful big brother from the convenience store. It would be great to see that guy again, he thought. Get some more of his advice. At the hospital, Claire took Leo to the emergency room, and a doctor quickly stitched up his wound. 6 or 7 stitches in total. The stitches from his fight with Gavin Zhang weren't even out yet. Old wounds still healing, and now a new one. Claire was a mix of exasperated and heartbroken. The memory of Jian's brutality in the suite made her eyes flash with cold anger. Mr. Zhou went too easy on him. She made a decision. Later, she would have a word with her favorite Special Forces veteran. He needed to let his old subordinate, the police captain, know. That Jian and Vince. They needed to be given some special attention in prison. A dark flame flickered in her eyes. Leo, sitting on the examination table, suddenly shivered. Doctor, he asked, looking around, do you guys keep the AC on in the winter? With his head patched up, they were ready to head back to campus. Back in the Maybach, Claire fussed over him, constantly checking if his wound hurt. The hand-holding and head-patting continued, completely uninhibited. At first, Leo felt a little shy about her affectionate gestures in front of Mr. Zhou. Mr. Zhou is right there, he whispered. It's fine, Claire said, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Mr. Zhou isn't a stranger. She then went back to gently stroking Leo's hair before lifting his shirt to check on the wound on his side. The family member in the driver's seat repeated his mantra 10,000 times. I see nothing. I see nothing. I see nothing. It's a Berkeley thing. It's a Berkeley thing. Screw you, Berkeley. He slammed his foot on the accelerator, and the black Maybach shot through the night, its driver's eyes quaking all the way. Even at top speed, by the time they reached the Berkeley campus gates, it was late into the night. They had missed the dorm curfew. Claire, who had anticipated this, happily made the decision. Another night at the one motel just outside the East Gate. This time, Mr. Zhou was with them. As the three of them walked in, the front desk owner saw Leo and Claire's familiar faces and, without thinking, slapped a key card on the counter. Only got one room left. He trailed off, finally noticing the middle-aged man standing with them. Without missing a beat, he quickly added, a 2-bed. He then clarified, a legitimate 2-bedroom. He sized up Mr. Zhou's attire, a look of understanding dawning on his face. He decisively slapped another key card on the counter, and there's a small room for the help. Mr. Zhou, ? Even though he and Claire were officially a couple and had coincidentally ended up in the same room a few times before, doing so in front of Mr. Zhou felt different. Leo felt a little awkward. He glanced at Claire, then at Mr. Zhou. Maybe I should room with Mr. Zhou. For Leo and Claire, the recent whirlwind of life-threatening events had consumed all their time and energy. They hadn't yet had a chance to update their respective best friends on their relationship status. And so, in Portland, Kevin Zhao and Tessa Yuan were still blissfully unaware that Mr. Reasonable and Miss Coincidence had finally, reasonably and coincidentally, become a couple. During their dinner dates, they would sigh dramatically, worrying about their friends' romantic futures. Kevin, in particular, was so concerned for his best buddy that he could barely eat. He was down to just 5 bowls of rice per meal. What's my bro Leo gonna do? He mumbled between mouthfuls, spraying grains of rice everywhere. Is he gonna end up alone forever? Honey, you're the smart one. You gotta think of a plan. It's said that when a couple gets together, their habits and preferences start to merge. Often, they even share a brain. Kevin's brain was running on dial-up, so the couple's cognitive functions relied entirely on Tessa. It is tricky, Tessa said, frowning. One's a clueless idiot, and the other is a stubborn Sundra. And worse, one is shamelessly logical about it, and the other willingly goes along with it. If they were going to get together, it should have happened the summer after senior year. Kevin thought back to his friend's performance during that time and rolled his eyes. You're right. Those two, if they ever manage to have a normal relationship, I'll run 3 laps naked through the university district, walking on my hands. But then he sighed again, filled with melancholy. Still, we can't just let this go on. I was hoping to be the best man at his wedding someday. An idea suddenly sparked in Tessa's eyes. It's not hopeless. I have an idea that might just work. Kevin's face lit up. What is it? Tell me. They both seem to have their reservations, which is why they haven't crossed that final line. Tessa explained, organizing her thoughts. But they're so close. We just need to give them a little push. We need to show them just how happy and sweet being in a relationship can be. She looked at her boyfriend, a confident smile spreading across her face. So what they need is a disgustingly happy couple to show up and rub their perfect relationship in their faces. A little public display of affection, a massive dose of secondhand sweetness. It could be the catalyst that makes them finally give in to temptation and take that final step. Kevin's eyes grew wider and wider. He slapped his thigh in excitement. That's brilliant. All we need now is to find a super in-love couple to do it. He paused, then looked at his girlfriend with a gaze of pure, unadulterated stupidity. So, honey, where are we going to find a couple like that? The air went still. Tessa stared at him, a vein beginning to throb in her temple. She took a deep breath. I'm suddenly overcome with the urge to get a new boyfriend. The plan was set. Leo and Claire soon received separate calls from their best friends. Kevin and Tessa were coming to Berkeley from Portland on the 24th to celebrate Christmas and New Year's with them. The news was a happy and welcome surprise, and they both looked forward to it. With 2 days until their friend arrived, Leo and Claire returned to their normal routine of classes and studying. But that didn't stop them from having meals together, walking to and from class, and taking evening strolls. Their hand-holding on the campus paths became more open, more confident. Their goodbyes in front of the dorms, with a lingering hug in the cold winter air, were just like any other couples. It was warm, comforting, and peaceful. The only ones disturbed were the poor, unsuspecting students who witnessed these scenes, their eyes wide with a mixture of envy and despair. They could only fall back on their one coping mechanism. It's fine, it's fine. It's a Northwood custom. A Northwood custom. Of course, after the incident at the Imperial Lounge, a small number of Arts Council students now knew the truth. But driven by the principle of if I had to suffer, so does everyone else, they decided to keep the secret. The pain they had endured, others must now experience. So with a silent, bitter pact, they told no one. They watched with immense satisfaction as the rest of the Berkeley student body tied themselves in knots, trying to rationalize what they were seeing. It was exactly what Marco Shaw had felt in the karaoke lounge. What was that saying? Question Marco. Understand Marco, become Marco. This feels so damn good. All hail Northwood High. All hail their customs. While the Arts Council students were sadistically guarding their secret, a certain retired Special Forces veteran was being forced to do the same. Summit Group Headquarters, 37th floor, Chairman's Office. Jian Chong. Conrad Sterling's brow furrowed as he listened to his trusted subordinates. Selective. Reported the events at the Imperial Lounge. A formidable aura emanated from him. He dared to target my daughter? Some people are getting far too bold. His cold gaze fell on the man, standing respectfully before him. Get a message to the East District Penitentiary. Tell them Conrad Sterling sends his regards. And tell them to take very good care of those idiots. Yes, sir, Zhou Jun replied, his face a mask of solemn duty. Not long after, several cells in the East District Penitentiary began to experience frequent, mysterious power outages. Having given his orders, Conrad's anger subsided slightly. He looked at his subordinate again. By the way, that birthday party Claire attended, was it for a boy or a girl? Zhou Jun answered without a flicker of emotion. A girl, Mr. Sterling. The ex-commando's expression was calm, his heartbeat steady and even. Thump, thump, thump. It was the truth. He wasn't lying. Good. Conrad's expression softened, but then a thought occurred to him. Still, it's strange that Claire would even go to someone else's birthday party. The girls of room 205 weren't stupid. From Claire's recent phone calls and the increasingly intimate way she and Leo behaved on campus, Jade, Quinn, and Molly had all sensed something was different. Furthermore, while the Arts Council members had kept the details of the karaoke lounge incident quiet, Quinn, with her extensive social network, had managed to dig up the full story. And when she shared it, the three of them were completely blown away. Holy crap, that's a lot to unpack. The Imperial Lounge? Quinn's eyes were wide. I used to go there all the time. I had no idea it was that dangerous. Jade was more impressed by Leo's actions. Brave and smart. That's not something you see in most students. Or most people, for that matter. Since the crisis had been resolved, they weren't worried, but they were still reeling from the final, shocking scene of the night. Molly's eyes were sparkling. So cool. That's straight out of a novel. I wish my boyfriend would get hit with a bottle, so I could hit someone back for him. The romance novel addict's voice was filled with dreamy aspiration. Meanwhile, in room 520, Leon sneezed. He paused, confused for a second, then smiled. Molly must be thinking of me. Back in room 205, Jay took a sharp breath. So, this means they're official. The three girls looked at each other, a mix of shock and profound satisfaction on their faces. Finally, they immediately confronted Claire. She had never planned to hide it from her roommates, so she calmly and freely admitted it. Even though they already knew the answer, hearing it directly from Claire made them want to cry with joy. My ship has sailed. It's real. Do you have any idea what we've been through these past few months? Someone kill me now, so my death can be a sacrifice to bless this new couple. Quinn immediately took charge. This calls for a celebration. We're dragging those guys from room 520 out with us. You two are paying, and you're starting with 3 toasts. Jade and Molly nodded in fervent agreement. Claire didn't object. She just smiled faintly. Fine, let's do it tonight. I have 2 other friends coming into town today anyway. It was now December 24th, Christmas Eve. That evening, Leo and Claire both got calls from their best friends. Kevin and Tessa had arrived at the station and were in a cab on their way to campus. The 2 of them left their dorms and met at the East Gate. A light snow was falling. Leo had grabbed a hat on his way out, the black baseball cap with the letter L on it that he and Claire had bought together during the Lovers' Festival. When he reached the gate, he saw Claire already waiting. To his surprise, she was wearing the matching pink cap, the one with the S. She looked up as he approached, her eyes noting his hat. A small smile played on her lips. A little in sync, aren't we? Leo puffed out his chest. It's perfectly reasonable for a couple to be in sync. His words made her eyes crinkle into a happy crescent shape. She reached out and took his hand, giving it a little squeeze as a reward. Reasonable. They stood by the road, waiting. Leo checked his phone. Kevin just texted. They're on their way. Should be here any minute. At the same moment, in a taxi 5 minutes away from Berkeley, the masterminds of Operation Catalyze were finalizing their strategy. Remember, stick to the plan, Tessa said sternly. We get out of the cab, holding hands. Then you say you're cold, and I'll wrap my scarf around your neck. Kevin nodded vigorously, pulling the scarf from his own neck and handing it to her. Got it. Then you pretend to be cold, and I'll take off my jacket and put it on you. Tessa briskly took off her coat. Exactly. And for the grand finale, I'll kiss you. We'll overwhelm them with sweetness. Kevin's face was a mask of fierce determination. Total sweetness overload. They won't know what hit him. 5 minutes later, the taxi pulled up to the Berkeley campus gate. Through the window, Kevin and Tessa could see the familiar figures of their best friends waiting by the road. They exchanged a look, their competitive spirits burning brightly. Showtime. The door opened. Kevin stepped out first, the cold, snowy air hitting him like a slap. He shivered, then immediately remembered his mission, grab his girlfriend's hand. But as he looked up, he saw Leo and Claire walking toward them. They were already holding hands, and they were both wearing matching baseball caps. He froze. In his confusion, he forgot to help Tessa out of the car. She waited a moment, then, getting impatient, climbed out herself. What are you just standing there for? She stopped mid-sentence. Her eyes fell on Leo and Claire, their linked hands, their matching black and pink hats. Tessa also froze. The 2 of them looked at each other. Crap, an oversight. We should have gotten a couple hats. They quickly recovered, communicating with a shared glance. It's fine. Those are probably just desk partner hats. The plan continues. By now, Leo and Claire had reached them. You made it. Must have been a long trip. Nah, it was fine, Kevin said, laughing a bit too loudly as he launched into the plan. Man, it's a little cold out here in Berkeley, though. But before he could finish, Leo nodded in agreement. Yeah, it is pretty cold. My neck is freezing. The next second, Claire was pulling a scarf from her small bag. I brought one for you. She stepped forward and carefully, tenderly, wrapped it around his neck.